In a world where nostalgia rages across the land, where everyone and their mother has a podcast, where there's still a movie trailer guy who says, in a world, three friends revisit films, shows, and games that molded them as they search for answers to life, the universe, and everything in between. Settle in and join us for Screen Refresh.
Welcome to Screen Refresh, a show where we revisit our favorite films of the past and see how they hold up. I'm your host, David, and I'm joined by my fellow Screen Refresh crew, Dean, Tim, and Nick.
Bonjour.
Do you read Sutter Kane, David?
Hello there.
Kind of. Did they publish a screenplay book? They should have.
Screenplay book.
Novelization?
Novelization. I call it a screenplay book. I always go to the bookstore that sells the screenplay books. Now, if nobody got the reference that Tim made, which I wouldn't be entirely surprised based on how this movie released, we this month are going to be talking about the supernatural horror that is Into the Mouth of Madness.
In the Mouth of Madness.
Not into?
Not into.
In the mouth.
We're going
into the mouth of
I
madness.
already had that prepped because I also screw up and say Into the Mouth of Madness sometimes, and I have to go correct myself.
It's easier to say. It's like you have to stop yourself from saying it in a way.
I disagree.
Pow, right in the Mouth of Madness.
You kiss your mama with that Mouth of Madness?
Just rated R.
Was it?
He does say that
Yes.
F word a couple times.
It was a little weird
a few
to
times.
see Alan Grant cursing
He has a
several
great.
times through this
I
movie.
mean, he also did it bad.
He dropped
I-
some great
I-
F bombs though.
He also he lost his New Zealand accent several times, which I had to laugh at.
That did throw me, like how often I was like, is he doing his accent? I'm like, oh, it's pretty thick here, and then it's like, wait, it's gone.
Creating an air of mystery. He's from the extra
He was
dimensional
written
place.
that way. Hint, hint.
Which means that he was
Bloodsport
written
flashbacks.
by an author who only has an idea of what the New Zealand accent is. It's like getting your
He
information from
only saw
Wikipedia.
Jurassic
It's like
Park.
third-party source.
I mean, to be fair, I think one of the best things about the way that this movie is set up is that any plot hole can just be waved away very easily. Like, you have both an unreliable narrator and an unreliable writer of said narrator.
I'm very shocked that Sutter Kane's work is so. He's a best-selling author. No, I don't really think that.
So we're going to be discussing in this episode In the Mouth of Madness. See, I had to punctuate that and really stop myself.
Yeah.
The 1994 supernatural horror directed by John Carpenter, who we love,
Love.
I do.
hit or miss, love-ish.
I think pound for pound, my top three directors.
I mean, I think he's better
Okay.
than Ridley Scott. So
Ooh, shots
Yeah.
fired. I mean, I would almost say like enamored with, like the things I really like, but there aren't too many.
he helped helm the genre of music I love so much. So that's a big positive thing in my eyes.
Bubblegum pop.
Like even the intro for this, I was kind of surprised that I thought it was Metallica at first because I was in the kitchen and I had like something
Yeah,
going
right?
in the back, like I had it running in the background. Like, oh, let me get water while the credits are rolling, and I heard it just enough because the volume was still a little low. I'm like, is that Metallica? And then I'm listening. I'm like, it's not, but they just made that for the score.
So evidently,
does it sound like it.
So evidently, originally John Carpenter wanted Enter Sandman for the opening of the movie. They couldn't get the rights to Enter Sandman, so him and Jim Lang composed a Metallica-light version of music to put in the
I
beginning.
legit
of this.
thought the
makes
ending, the ending music was Enter Sandman. I was like, wait, what was that? What is that? And it was completely different.
Yeah, they just wrote the song "The Arrival of the Sand Person."
But yeah, the composer who worked with John Carpenter on this, Jim Lang, I guess they met on, or they worked together previously on Body Bags, which was, I want to say, an HBO or Showtime TV movie. It was a horror anthology. But then Jim Lang would later, after this, go on to do Hey Arnold.
Very comparable.
So when you hear all the music
that
in
is
this,
interesting.
just imagine him doing all that jazzy Hey Arnold stuff.
I don't know how well that Metallica rock sets up. I don't know if it goes well with the beginning.
and it's also like a pretty big departure for John Carpenter's style, who's usually doing a little bit more electronic stuff, and just for me really clashes with the rest of the score for the movie, which has a more classical kind of
Right.
vibe to it. Just felt really odd, and I did not remember that was the opening track. So like when I started it up, and I'm like, huh.
It felt weird that this movie was made in the mid 90s, technically the early 90s, and released mid, but it felt like it was made in the 80s and waited to be released, at least in the way that I felt with it. Just like the cinematography, the film that they used, the style of how the whole thing was written, it just felt more like an 80s movie than something out of the 90s to me.
I know what you mean. I guess I would interpret it as, I don't know how this got a wide release, right? Like a wide release movie.
Yeah, it was.
It felt
sure.
it felt like a lower budget movie, I guess, in that not super in a super negative way, but I think just to what Tim or Nick is feeling about it being an 80s movie. It just felt it felt like a lower budget movie.
I don't know if I agree with that entirely. I mean, it had limited locations, and like certainly even some things about the film quality seemed older, but in terms of like I'm just like thinking back to some of the scenes, and like even though it wasn't as widely used, like some of the like the puppetry and the creature work.
Oh yeah, like I definitely don't think this felt like they shorted the budget on the talent in this, because I mean the practical effects were still K&B, and then all the visual effects were ILM. So they had top talent working on that. Plus it was still John Carpenter, and they had a great cast in it.
Yeah, the monsters at the end look amazing. And I appreciated how it was less is more, and they did the Jaws thing where they don't show that much, and if they do, it's under heavy shadow and poor lighting.
Yeah, and like in the behind the scenes stuff, you see like the full like I don't know if it was I don't think it was animatronic, but like the puppetry of it.
Yeah,
and,
it was
like,
a mix.
They're really in depth and really, really well done. But like they never fully show them, which is great, honestly.
Which I know is probably also just because they figure it's a lot easier to not see the seams if they're just using this sparingly in shadow. But the end monster wall was part animatronic and part people in their puppeting, because Howard Berger was the head puppeteer for it, and they had all sorts of contraptions to get that monster wall moving and looking somewhat in sync.
This is nothing to do with the movie, but John Carpenter was at a recent film premiere, and he was being interviewed, I think by IGN of all people, and they asked him, hey, what are you currently playing? John Carpenter is currently playing, as of September, August, July, whenever that interview was, he is currently playing Fallout and the remake of Prince of Persia.
Yeah, he's been a big gamer for years. It's like post, at least I know, following like The Ward or whatever, his major directing stuff, he's just kind of done, I go to basketball games and I play like Xbox, and that's pretty much it.
Can you imagine hopping on Halo and it's getting destroyed by the John Carpenter? That's funny. If anything, it'd be more like Dead by Daylight.
All of a sudden behind you, you hear the sting from Halloween, and then John
Just on the
Carpenter
headphones.
kills you.
But he's playing the side-scrolling Prince of Persia.
Yeah,
I don't know. All
At
he
least that's-
said was
that's how I understood
all
it.
he said was the remake of Prince of Persia, the remake, and then it showed a quick like 2 second thing of whoever cut the TikTok. But I never played Prince of Persia since PlayStation 2, so I have no idea.
Yeah, I know. I think
Yeah,
they
that-
did one that was in the past like 3 years or so. That was the
It's
updated.
going through like a big revival
Yeah.
right now. They're like trying to revive that whole franchise because it kind of died out a little bit.
Yeah, like it feels very like Uncharted style. I haven't played their most recent one, but most of the update ones they've done, I do miss the original like Prince of Persia 1 and 2 on PC.
So that's what's going on with John Carpenter now.
I mean, he still looks
Go
good.
pick up all of his Lost Themes albums.
He still looks good. Is he still directing? I didn't look it up.
No.
No, he's done.
No, I mean technically he retired. Trying to remember when he like totally just removed himself from the whole Hollywood thing because he was basically just said that this isn't fun anymore. I don't want to do it.
Well, yeah. So I think back in like 2010, 2011, he did The Ward with Amber Heard, and it wasn't received well. And then even before that, he hadn't done anything since, I want to say, was it Ghost of Mars was the one before that? So it had been a gap in between. But then after that point, it was just kind of like, you know what? I just want to do my own thing and have fun and not have to keep doing projects. So I think he's popped up and did some, it was like a Peacock show or something for Halloween one year called, I think it was like John Carpenter's Suburb of Terror or something. But it was all reenactments of real events about like serial killers in neighborhoods or something. And it was just utterly forgettable.
Mm.
It looks like he has 2 projects coming up, but I don't know if they're development hell or if they're actually getting anything done. And it's Halloween Comes Around.
Oh, that's probably
by Demetrius Thompson. He's one of the writers.
that might just be like I created this originally kind of writing credits. I mean, I'm just sight unseen. That's what I think.
Well, yeah, I know the other thing that becomes difficult following his filmography is every single time somebody ends up deciding to make like a fan film or something like that, they'll list him as the characters by and story by and all this other stuff. So if you look at it, it's like, wow, he's done 300 films. No, he hasn't done 300 films. They've made 250 Halloween fan films.
That would be it. Well, these are upcoming. Yeah, based on characters created by.
Oh, that makes it kind of hard to figure that out.
Yeah, unless you watch every single one.
His last
For Halloween on screen now.
His last movie was Halloween Ends in 2 years ago.
And again, that was only story and characters by.
Well, in addition to John Carpenter on this film, we also have the writer Michael DeLuca, who was the writer credited on this, who's known more for producing, has actually done phenomenally producing, opposed to his kind of fewer writing credits. Most well known for producing like Captain Phillips, The Social Network, Moneyball, Brothers.
Go into the other direction. Also, Ghost Rider and Ricky Stenicki.
There's ones I didn't want to mention.
Ricky
There's no way
Stenicki.
He'll do anything.
Don't bash it until you watch it. It is good. It is good.
I have nothing against it. I'm just saying, in terms of the wacky comparison of like, on one side he did Moneyball and The Social Network, and then also he did Ghost Rider, Drive Angry, Ricky Stenicki. Like it's clear that it's not just I only do Oscar bait films. He also wrote Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare, the Nightmare Part 6, and Judge Dredd. So
maybe I just wanted to elevate him a little bit, be
Before
like,
you hit
hey,
him with that.
let's not have any of our listeners go into the synopsis of this movie being like, oh man, yeah, John Carpenter, yeah, he only had a few good movies really, and then there's this guy who did Ricky Stenicki. It's like, oh, all right.
I went
I will
into
stand
Ricky
by both of
Stenicki
these.
thinking it was going to be another like schlock, terrible movie. I had a good time from start to finish. It was actually really well done.
The one he did with Aquafina recently, that one is schlock. You can judge that before you see it.
Which
the
one was that?
Lotto one?
Yes.
Jackpot?
Yes, that's it.
Ah.
I only watched it because I heard John Cena is a Ninja Turtles fan, like, and it's part of his character. And that's what got me to just turn it on.
That's all it takes?
I mean, it's a part of the movie, but it's not enough for me to carry
It's
the
just
rest
enough
of it.
to watch a clip on YouTube and that's it.
The entire movie, he wears a shell and a bandana. And they don't mention
It
it.
would have come in handy.
You know what's funny though, like with Aquafina, I find her voice to be so iconic. I was just recently watching Kung Fu Panda 4, and just like immediately with I think her character was a rabbit. She started talking, and I'm like, oh, that's Aquafina.
I think it's when you cast somebody because of their voice and not like a voice actor of, oh, like they'll do 12 voices. It's like, no, you're casting somebody because it's just speak. Just speak your normal voice.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing about like having I mean, she's well known to a point, but having like well known actors just like play a character in an animated feature and being like, oh yeah, that's this person. Like, okay, it's like, oh, that's The
Thank
Rock.
Disney.
I guess Disney does
Or
that a lot.
Pixar,
I mean,
I don't know, one of
I
them.
want to just. I don't need to give more reverence to Studio Ghibli, but like I think that's one thing they do really well with their voice actor castings. That it's never like it's like, oh, I know who that is. I mean, except for certain ones, like I guess Billy Crystal, because how do you not know what Billy Crystal sounds like?
Yeah.
But
If you're born after 1995.
that's true. But for the most part, like I never realized for the longest time in a lot of the Studio Ghibli films, like that all the voice actors in them were like A-list actors.
Oh yeah.
I had no idea for the longest time, and then I remember going back at one point with Howl's Moving Castle and being like, "Oh, that was Christian Bale."
Yeah.
There were memes when The Boy and the Heron came out. It's like, Robert Pattinson, you're the Heron. You don't have to go. You could just do your own thing. You don't have to go hard. And then it's like him taking it into an extreme length just to go over the top, and the voice is so well done that you don't even know it's him when you're watching the movie.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess that's the difference between like an actual actor and someone who kind of phones it in.
So, Sam
Speaking
Neill.
of actors, when did this come out?
Wait, speaking of actors, when did this come out?
I'm trying to redirect.
This came out in Sam Neill.
This came out 2 movies after Jurassic Park.
In 1994.
Yeah, this came out in 1994, and it stars Sam Neill, who the more I talk about and think about his movies, the more I realize, man, I really like Sam Neill.
Oh, he's great.
I mean, he's great, but every time I see a movie he's in, I'm like, wow, I forgot how much I like Sam Neill.
Is he a horror buff?
I don't know. I always start to spiral with him because I watched In the Mouth of Madness, and then I was like, oh man, I kind of want to watch Sphere now.
Wait, was he in Sphere?
He was not. No,
Yeah.
Not
he
in
was,
Sphere.
he was not in Sphere.
No?
He was in Event Horizon.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know he's in Event Horizon. Are you sure he's not in Sphere?
1000%. It was
Dustin Hoffman.
Dustin
Yeah.
Hoffman.
Samuel L. Jackson
No.
and Sharon Stone. At least specifically with Lovecraft, it's that stupid quote. Like, if I had a nickel for every time he was in a Lovecraft related movie, I'd have 2 nickels. It's just in a lot, but it's weird that it happened more than once.
I mean, to be fair, like if you had a nickel for every Lovecraftian movie that ever came out, you'd have like 2 or 3
There's
nickels.
not many. Sam Neill's in half of them.
Lovecraftian movies? You'd have a few dozen nickels. Good ones,
I mean, but like
you would have a couple
yeah,
nickels.
that's a good point. Ones that actually had a real budget and like,
Sam Neill was so weird for me. He felt like I didn't see anything he was in after Jurassic Park. To me, he disappeared.
Yeah, no,
I think
me
I was
too. And
aware
he's-
that he was in Event Horizon based on the trailers, but I like
And
my
he's
only
been in a
image of
lot,
him is
too.
as like Merlin on like a TV movie about Arthur.
That was in
and
2006.
that movie Merlin, I must have watched that movie 100 times when I was a kid. I loved that movie.
I never saw it. I just saw that. Remember the commercial?
Wait, have you guys not seen Hunt for the Wilder People?
that
Yes,
is
I
also
just meant
phenomenal.
until like recently. Yeah.
Thor Ragnarok?
No one's
He
seen
was
that
fake
movie.
Odin. He was the fake Odin actor in the beginning when they're putting on the play, which I just thought was like, wow, Sam Neill. Really breaking out the heavy guns for such a joke
Wait,
role.
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to remember who played Loki in that fake play.
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon, that's right. Matt Damon becoming a cameo king now late in his career. But yeah, so we have our main star, Sam Neill. We also have, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation probably, but Jürgen Prochnow. Jürgen? Not Jürgen? Oh. Playing Sutter Kane, which is kind of our main antagonist.
Famous for
We
Wing
have-
Commander. I
I
mean,
mean,
also
that's-
Das Boot.
is that-
But
Wing Commander.
Also, the English Patient?
yeah. He's an extremely good that guy.
Yeah.
Well, he was in Judge Dredd too.
Yeah.
The 1995, not the new one.
Oh
but-
damn! I was gonna say like I don't remember him outside of this movie.
Team, he was in movies we covered for this show.
Which one?
Wing Commander.
Oh wait,
Oh, that's why you mentioned Wing Commander. I was like, what was that your first go-to? I was like, oh, that was before me. That's why
Does
I
he have
didn't
a big
I didn't
part
pick
in
up
that?
on that.
David doesn't listen to
He
our
was
back catalog.
he was one of the captains.
oh yeah, okay, yeah, it's coming
He
back
was
to
Wing
me.
Commander.
He had short hair.
He always had short hair.
This is the only one that he has long hair.
That's the only time I only ever saw him as Wing Commander.
Sorry, David. Go ahead.
No, that's all right. We also have Julie Carmen, who plays Linda Stiles, who works for the publishing company that Sam Neill is investigating. And then we have some smaller parts that I just want to call out because they're real fun.
Oh yeah.
This
Like
isn't-
we have like a really small, almost cameo from Peter Jason as Mr. Paul, just in the very, very beginning
Master
of the
Boyd.
movie.
yeah, Master Boyd.
I mean,
Who I saw that and I was like, I know that face. Why do I know this face?
Well-
And I was like, oh, that was cool.
also, I love how John Carpenter always seems to have his stable of actors that he likes to go back to. Because Peter Jason was also in like Prince of Darkness and some other ones that he did. So I love when he ends up reusing people because then it's just, well, clearly you guys all like each other if you just keep coming back.
Maybe that's what I like. I don't want to say know him most as, but like that's why his face has become so recognizable to me.
Yeah.
Because he keeps getting used in those small ways. We also have an older Charlton Heston in there. Not really a bit part, but like, you know,
Cheston.
a decent little bit. Plays Jackson Harglow, the owner of the publishing company. Also really fun. Frances Bay as Mrs. Pickman, the little inn owner, who actually like puts up some real creepy vibes.
She does.
Yeah.
And if her name isn't familiar to you, she's probably most notable for me in Happy Gilmore.
Yep.
Wait, is she the you just pull landscaping duty
Yeah,
woman?
she plays his grandmother. That's where I know her from.
Yeah, I mean that's the most for me.
This cast is like unintentionally stacked. Like I think you're getting to. It's like
Right?
Like
I mean another
Interesting.
one of my favorites. We have Wilhelm von Homburg, who you are like the buzzing of flies to him.
If there's
who,
three things I know about Wilhelm von Homburg, it's this, Ghostbusters 2, and Die Hard.
I just remember seeing him in like the scene where he's introduced, and I'm like, wait a second, is this the villain?
He has that face of just, he's definitely cast for this specific reason. And when I saw him, I'm like, why do I know this? And then the more he just acted and just facial expressions, like, oh, that's where I know him from, Ghostbusters.
Another noteworthy one, we have Bernie Casey in there, known for like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Revenge of the Nerds, like prime like mid to late 80s.
That's where he's from.
which
I knew he
character was that?
He owns the insurance investigating company.
Oh, yeah.
That
yeah.
Samuel works
he
for
was
it.
the
Right,
Lambda
right.
Lambda Lambda president.
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So like a lot of
Hey,
like small parts for
you're
like.
missing the most important one.
Yeah. There's a big one.
Am I? What one am I
David
missing?
Warner, who played Dr. Wren, who was still the professor in this movie.
Oh, I am not nearly as familiar with him.
Just-
Really?
Yeah. Go ahead.
He was the professor in TMNT 2.
He was also in Waxwork. I think he was in Time Bandits.
He was in
He was
Tron.
the voice of Ra's al Ghul in Batman the Animated
Huh.
Series.
There's still a big one we're missing.
John Glover as Saperstein.
Okay, I didn't know this. Okay, maybe you didn't notice it because I didn't notice it until I saw the credits rolling.
Oh, yeah.
Hayden
The Paperboy?
Christensen plays the Paperboy at the
Oh,
end
yeah.
of the movie.
It's just for hit. I was gonna get to that when we did the synopsis.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't think that was like
Because
jumping
he doesn't
out
have
of the
he doesn't
cast
have
list.
full credits.
I think this
Yeah.
was his premiere.
It was.
It was his premiere.
It was a big part.
But yeah, we skipped John Glover as Saperstein, who played the Mad Doctor in Batman and Robin. He was the owner
was
of the
Lex-
company
Right.
in Gremlins 2.
Lex Luthor in Smallville.
He's terrific. I love John Glover. He was also on a short-lived show called Brimstone, where I think he played the devil, but that's where he's great.
Oh, he was the CEO in Gremlins, too.
Yeah.
That's where I caught him from.
So yeah, like a weirdly sort of stacked cast for the time, although very few of them have much screen time at all, really. But
Yeah.
And like talking about screen time, this movie is weirdly short to me.
I felt it was as long as it needed
Which is
to be.
weirder that this episode is going to be weirdly long.
No. I'm trying to remember what the runtime on this. I believe it was a little over an hour and a half.
Yeah, I
maybe
think it was like
135.
1:39.
Credits, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, every time I watch this movie, I always wish that they did a little bit more with, like, I mean, we'll get into this, but, like, between the discovery of the fake town and oh no, there's monsters.
Yeah, like if we got...
Sometimes, oh, sorry.
I was going to say, if we got maybe like extend it out, give us 15 minutes more of things slowly being discovered as being weird in that town before it's just, oh, well, that painting's weird. Oh, let's go to the church. They go to the church, and then it's like immediately it just escalates from there for the rest of the film.
It's a love-hate thing that I have with Lovecraft. It's always talking about, like, oh, and he sees the monster, and it's so indescribable. It drives him insane, and then that's it. And then you get used to other writers like, Tolkien and George R.R. Martin they'll spend, 50 pages describing a tree that have no bearing on the current plot. And I wanted to see more of that, but knowing this was a Lovecraftian kind of thing, I knew, like, if I'm going to see anything, it's going to be in the last, like, 3 minutes of the movie. And that's exactly what ended up happening. And it always focuses more on just crazy townsfolk and cultists that always have their hoods up and stuff. And I really did wish it did have more with that, because at the end when he's like saying, oh, I can't hold them back anymore, they're gonna come through, I was like, yeah, this is gonna be great. And then that's it.
Well, I mean, I thought the payoff was fine.
Yeah.
I just wish there was more of, like, the creepy investigation stuff.
Yeah, like
It just
a
felt
better
like we
blend.
went too fast between, like, I don't know, I think this whole thing is a hoax, and then we kind of skipped 10 pages and suddenly we're already in the church.
Yeah. Because, I mean, we do get a lot of bleed through here and there of, like, visions and creatures and all sorts of stuff. So it's not all loaded on the back end. But I agree. Like, if we had more time to let the town investigation breathe, so we get a little bit more dread in there instead of just, okay, in the church, and then all of a sudden Linda goes crazy, and then everything goes to hell, and then time to go, and then rush him out the door. That was...
Yeah, I think part of that for me is because Sam Neill's character is pitched as being like an investigator, that I'm like, oh, it's gonna be like a detective thing.
Yeah, like
And
give
we're
us a
gonna have to, like,
procedural.
yeah, we're gonna have to, like, really find him, and then it's just like, nah, I'm here, bro. And I'm like, oh,
This was my first viewing. I really thought that he was Sutter Kane the whole time until he actually shows Jurgen as Sutter Kane. I'm like, oh, it's not a bait and switch, and he's not just kind of running along with this, and it's not like a pen name that he uses and all that.
So that means the company sent him out to find himself.
He did. They
Like
didn't
an
know.
Eat, Pray, Love.
they send him on a journey.
Yeah, like a
It's like,
house.
we've never seen what he looks like.
Usually, whenever I download a movie, I'll do like a spot check. I'll play it, and then I'll just kind of click the mouse along the time the time bar, whatever, just to make sure like it downloaded properly. And then when I click the first few times in the first third of the movie and seeing him in like the jail cell and stuff, I'm like, man, this is not what I initially expected. Just with past knowledge and knowing the poster, and that's it. So it was definitely kind of like I got this completely wrong.
Yeah, you mentioned the poster. I hate the poster for this. I think they did a terrible job with it, personally. This was kind of like that early 90s era when they were using less art and more just like, let's do a cool photo manipulation. And I feel like it does not sell the movie at all or really portray what's going on.
I mean,
there's like some... There's some good versions of the movie poster for like the Japanese release that like I think are spot on.
I mean, the joke is, in the movie, they have a movie poster that is
Which has
better
great
than the
art.
real movie poster.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm surprised they didn't use that one for the movie poster.
The real poster's
Yeah.
the one of like the book.
Like you have
They
it
should
right
have.
there. You put the work in. Why be like, oh, we created this cool movie poster for the fake In the Mouth of Madness in the movie. Should we use it? No. Do you think it'd be cool if it was meta that we were using the in-movie poster
Right?
as the movie poster about making a movie about everybody losing their minds? No.
Yeah, that was a bit of a disappointment. I remember like seeing this movie on shelves and being like, eh.
Yeah, that does not draw
it just
you
does
in.
not have like the appeal that I think like a full art piece or even like some of the international release covers have.
Yeah, like I don't know if anybody uses Letterboxd, any of our listeners. If you go in, you can do the change poster and change backdrop options. So this way, whenever you look at it, you see the different versions. And there's so many other cooler ones that are either international posters or just like custom releases. So you can change it out to be the poster from the movie. So at least we have that.
Yeah, that's actually a really cool feature. I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
I don't use Letterbox a ton, but
You can
should.
do
It's so
that?
good. Yeah.
Because I know Plex you can do that, but that's a whole different story.
Yep. Yeah, I usually go in and I'll change out all the posters for the movies and things, depending on what it is.
I will say though, with this movie and like its shorter runtime, I do unfortunately also hit that point where because I wanted more from it, I usually just watch it again.
Well, like back to back.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a movie I really like.
Run it back.
So like, I will watch it and I'll be like, oh man, I wish they did. And I always have that same reaction. I was like, oh, I wish they did more of the mystery part. And I'm just like, oh, I'll just watch it again, I guess.
I wish it was longer, at least double. Let's play it again.
I'll invent the mystery as I watch.
Because so
It's like, wow, when you do the back-to-back watch, I feel totally fulfilled on the mystery aspect.
So, David, being a fan of this, so like, when do you remember first seeing this one?
Well, I didn't see it when it came out. I saw this in, I want to say, the early 2000s. I honestly, this one I was introduced to as a TV movie.
Oh, that's a good. I didn't catch it on TV, but that's a good find.
Yeah. I remember originally seeing it as a TV movie. It was one of those ones for me, kind of like I think a lot of us at that time period saw bits and pieces of Dune on TV at all times. Where it's like, have I seen Dune? I'm like, I know I've seen scenes of Dune.
Have I just seen a lot of photos of Sting in a codpiece?
So this was introduced to me that way, and it was one of those movies where I was really impressed with it, and it really like hit me, and then I didn't see it again until like my late 20s, and then I was like, oh my god, I forgot about this.
Yeah. Because, like, I worked my way through a lot of the John Carpenter and horror films, and then it was, okay, well, now that I've seen everything that just pops up on TV, now let's try to delve a little further into, like, what can I find through back when, like, Netflix had just started and they were doing the DVDs of what's in their horror catalog, and then finding stuff that I didn't know about. And that's when I found, like, In the Mouth of Madness, I found Prince of Darkness, which, have you guys seen Prince of Darkness? Also John Carpenter?
No,
You mentioned
I
it
won't-
a lot,
no,
though.
I'm not.
I think that's the one from his like trilogy.
Yeah, it's the second in
haven't
the
seen.
Apocalypse trilogy. So it's The Thing, then it's Prince of Darkness, and then it's this. As like very not tied storyline wise, but tied like thematically of a lot of these end of the world scenarios. But Prince of Darkness is one of my favorites. So if you guys liked this and you like The Thing and you dig like John Carpenter's vibe, definitely go dig out Prince of Darkness. Because it's
you've shown me Prince of Darkness.
yeah.
I'm looking at a couple of screen grabs, and I'm like, I do remember watching this in your living room, although I don't remember it that well.
Yeah, it's worth going back to. It's like I'm going to do an episode about 31 Days of Halloween, and that's going to be the first episode.
Oh,
I was gonna say my wife and I always do I mean, as soon as spooky season comes up, you know, I have my whole curated thing that I go through. But the actual Halloween night, we always try and do a movie marathon based on a theme. Maybe it'll be the John Carpenter Apocalypse trilogy.
It's a good one.
I looked into Letterboxd. You have to be a patron to be able to change the poster.
Oh,
Because I thought I didn't.
it's
see
one of
it.
those things where I forget that I pay yearly because it's just auto renew, and then I'm good for the next year, and then I I forget what features there are. So.
That sounds like most subscription services, yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's like, what is this money for? It's like, so I can change movie posters. Cool. Anyone have any other thoughts or things before we get into it?
No.
Nope.
Cool beanies. So, our film begins with John Trent, played by Sam Neill, forcibly being restrained and dragged into a psychiatric institution. This is always a great start for a movie. I'm always ruined immediately. John Trent is being dragged, yelling, "I don't belong here. I'm not crazy."
Well, I love the, what was it, when he screams that I'm not insane, then all of a sudden you hear, "Hey, I'm not if he's not."
I
Yeah,
like
me
that.
neither.
Yeah.
That hallway.
Just like, oh, wait, we can just say that?
That hallway reminded me of the one from Silence of the Lambs, and I'm glad it went in a different direction. But just hearing the other inmates screaming that out definitely. I didn't expect to laugh in the first 2 minutes of the movie.
Still crazy, but a sense of humor.
Are we supposed to know that's Sam Neill until the shot at the door?
I don't think so.
Because I did not realize that was him until.
Oh yeah, I don't think we see his face.
No, we
don't.
see his face. Yeah.
No, you don't.
Do we?
You don't see his face until the door closes, and then you see him trying to look out the
Oh
cell
yeah, he
window.
comes up to the window. Yeah.
Wait, in the beginning of the movie,
Yeah.
when
Yes.
he's getting dragged away to his cell?
Yes, you do
Yeah.
not see his
We
face.
see his face.
You do not see his face. Because I was wondering why the hell, like, who is this guy? And then you see the close up. I mean, if you see his face, it's not center perfectly shot. You can clearly see. You
Yeah, I
might be able
remember.
to see his face as he's getting dragged, but it's going to be like side profile, and it's not going to be a clear shot.
That's why I asked, because I remember. Oh, I didn't know it was Sam, and that was him until he looks through the door.
And then if you do
he's
see it,
locked
it's
up.
going to be like a blink and you miss it, because the main shot of seeing him in the cell is the actual reveal for seeing his face.
I think it's effective because you're probably the whole movie's marketed. Sam Neill is the main star, and then he's in an insane asylum right at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's already over. We lost, I guess.
Because, like, the camera is watching the two orderlies drag him toward the camera, but his head is down, and it doesn't really look like Sam Neill. And even when he's in the main hall and he's, like, fighting, trying to regain control, I really feel like they got a stunt double or somebody else that kind of looks like him, but it's not the full reveal. Because it really doesn't look like him at all until they throw him in the cell and he looks out the window.
You pause it and just a terrible wig.
I was gonna say it's like the modern movie practice of like, hey, we don't need your face in this, so we're not gonna pay you. We're just gonna pay a stunt double at a different rate.
I'll have to watch it later. If I was still in my office setting, I'd look at it, but
So anywho, Sam Neill, as we find out at some point, is the person being dragged to the cell. And he gets thrown into the cell, and we see him, do the close-up on the window being all super dramatic. And he has been incarcerated into the asylum. We are then shortly after introduced to Dr. Wren, who's coming to visit Sam Neill, who wants to talk to him and find out find out his story, because he doesn't believe that John Trent, Sam Neill, is actually crazy.
I was say he gets a lot of mileage out of that black crayon.
Yeah, right?
really does.
Because as they're walking, he's like, has he requested anything? He's like, only a black crayon. And yeah, in hindsight, I don't know anyone who could do all of that with one black crayon. Because as we see the inside of Sam Neill's cell, everything is covered in black crosses.
Including him.
Including him.
It's a very iconic look for this character.
Oh, absolutely.
I didn't like it that much because I didn't get a religious vibe at any point through this entire movie. Yeah, there's scenes that take place in a church, but that's not its intended purpose. But the whole rest
No,
of
I
it
think-
too, he doesn't portray himself as a religious person, so
Yeah, I think he was kind of faking it.
the craziness
because well, sort of, because like the end of the movie when they undo the flashback, he's like, I don't want to leave. Like, this is the only place it's safe. So I think a little bit he was just like leaning into it.
I mean, I think also
I
after
see
you
both
see
sides.
what he sees, you're going to find God real quick if that's your only option.
Could be. But yeah, I also like the narrative idea that he like took off his clothes so he could write the crosses all over them.
Which means at some point when an orderly walks by, it's just him butt naked in that cell, drawing on the floor.
Just like, dude, what are you doing? I need the crosses. Put the crosses on. He wasn't in a straitjacket though, right? He couldn't have been. I was just like, is that a thing they missed? Was he in a straitjacket drawing crosses somehow?
But then I'm just wondering, it's like, but like a wax crayon, how do you get that to write on skin and cloth and denim?
The damn good crayon.
That's
I
the
mean-
magic.
Just a Crayola brand incorporation into the movie.
I mean, if Sutter Kane writes that he draws crosses on the walls with a crayon, he's gonna do it.
I
I
wish
mean, this is a very cool kind of Lovecraftian framing device, though, of the person who's now crazy having to explain their story. Just because then you end up with the unreliable narrator situation.
Which I absolutely love. Which, I mean, I kind of said earlier, basically lets you hand wave any potential plot holes as being like, well, yeah, but he's crazy telling this story, so like, we don't really know like how good this is.
So I don't know if you guys are familiar with it all, but they make a lot of references to like directly Stephen King and then adjacently like H.P. Lovecraft in this. But Stephen King in 1980 had a short story called Crouch End, that the whole story was about this couple who like is in this town in England and then get lost, and they end up in this like mysterious town with all these like weird children and like weird deformed creature townspeople, and then it summons a like Lovecraftian elder god at the end of it, and then it jumps back to present day where only the wife escaped and she's now crazy and she's told the story to somebody else. That feels very similarly inspired as this does of the Lovecraft stuff. So if you're digging the framing device and the vibe and all of that, that is another story option.
I may have to check that out. So Dr. Wren is talking to Sam Neill in his cell, who is explaining to Sam Neill that he doesn't think he's crazy. He wants to help him get out. And now suddenly Sam Neill is very against the idea of getting out. He's like, no, I don't want to get out. Who told you that? He's like, well, I think you did when you were coming in. We're very clearly saying that you weren't insane and you wanted to get out. And he's like, no, I'm fine here. I'm paraphrasing, but yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have a question that I don't know. Was there a reason this guy specifically was coming to see specifically Sam Neill? Like, why Sam Neill?
I looked at it like it's the Terminator with what's his name, like being the psychiatrist for Sarah Connor. It's like, oh, I see a lot of potential with this guy. It's kind of crazy. Maybe I can kind of get something out of it. That's
Well,
the
so
way I took it anyway.
Dr. Wren, when he arrives, tells Saperstein that he's been monitoring or sent to monitor all of these occurrences of people involved
right.
with the Sutter Kane riots and the craziness. So
Gotcha. Okay, yeah,
because
that's enough
of
for
what
me.
we find out later on him, it makes sense. And like, how did they know he's involved with this? Okay, so we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. That's.
I gotta say, Nick, I was a little concerned when you said you thought it was a Terminator kind of thing. I was like, wait, they like sent the doctor back in time to kill him?
Well, that, like in between the original trilogy, he's the only one that.
No, I was. No,
And the
I was just
perfect organism they can send was David Warner.
You're the model.
It was really more of a voice thing. They could only send people with iconic voices through time. All of a sudden, all the cells open up, and it's like Frank Welker, John DiMaggio.
So Sam Neill, now being coaxed by Dr. Wren a little bit, decides that he's like, all right, I am going to tell the story. So his story starts, and it starts with a flashback to him not being crazy with black crosses drawn all over his body. Instead, we get a kind of a quick scene introducing Sam Neill's character, who he is and what he does, because he's in the middle of a insurance investigation. We find out that Sam Neill's character is a special investigator who investigates insurance fraud, and he's kind of when we see him, he's sitting down interrogating someone who's, I think burned down one of his own warehouses for the insurance money.
Yeah.
It ends up getting called out because he had a mistress and a wife, and it's a whole complicated thing.
I like how they set this up just as a quick little scene that it's like it doesn't have anything to do with the rest of the movie, but at least we establish that he is good at
he's the
using
Benoit
whatever
Blanc
tactics
of
he needs.
insurance.
Wait, what?
He's the Benoit Blanc of insurance fraud.
I mean, essentially, yeah. Like, he's really good at his job, and he's a no-nonsense, but also he's willing to play dirty on things, seeing as it's like, yeah, I've been scoping out and hunting your mistress, and then use those photos against you to, like, get word out of your wife.
Your wife wanted to
And then
screw
that's what
me,
he
and
says
that
of,
helped
like-
my investigation too.
It's like, if you're going to commit insurance fraud, don't make a partner out of your wife, and then don't screw around behind her back.
Yeah, so we get this really great intro to him being like Tim said, we get to see what he does, how good he is. We get to see how other characters interpret how good he is as well. So we get this like good setup of like he's an insurance investigator. He's very good at what he does. We then go from that to him sitting in a diner with, I'm spacing on the actor's name. With what?
Robinson.
With Robinson, who I guess runs an insurance company or an investigation.
Yeah, or at least like
agency.
he's an
some
insurer.
managerial position over him.
Or an insurer. It wasn't super clear exactly what he did, but he wanted to hire Sam Neill on a more permanent basis. But Sam Neill is freewheeling
Yeah,
off
it
on
seems
his
like
own, doing his own investigations for
the
hire.
insurance companies outsourced to him as a freelance. Yeah, exactly.
So they're sitting in a diner, basically talking contracts and careers, like trying to coax him over. And we get this great scene where it's a fixed camera in the diner, just looking at the two of them talk with like their food, looking at contracts and stuff. And in the background, we see a disheveled man in a long coat walking directly towards camera from the
This
street.
kills
Such a good
me.
shot.
I don't understand how some people could be that oblivious to like spatial awareness. Like out of the corner of your eye, instead of just normal pedestrians, you start to see running. You wouldn't want to look over and see what's happening, but oh well.
I mean, I would like to think that, and then I was in the supermarket this week, and I'm walking down an aisle, and then somebody just, like, takes a step back into me because, I needed to get a better view of, like, these jars of sauce, and it's, how do you not see me literally walking in front of you? So maybe spatial awareness is not a universal trait or talent.
I had the same feeling, Nick, but then I think it was more so just because of the dramatic irony. It's like we know he's coming across the street, but they're so locked in their conversation that it worked for me.
Like, if you want it to
They're
be
insurance
that
men, Nick.
scene,
They love insurance.
have a more interesting discussion going on than, like, you should work for me. I don't know. Like, I don't really want to. Maybe I will eventually. Like, that's what has you locked in. Not like, hey, have you seen the specials?
Look at his pie. It's plastic, but it looks
Look
like
at
this
this
when we
pie
really...
looks great. Is that a man with an axe? No, don't worry
Trent,
about
you a
that.
pie guy? Me never was really one much for pie.
It's like pie versus cake. Let's go. Hot takes.
Cheesecake a pie, cheesecake a cake. I don't know, Trent.
I thought this was a business meeting.
So the exciting quote unquote thing that they are talking about is potentially hiring Sam Neill to work for Arcane Publishing to investigate the disappearance of their top horror novelist Sutter Kane, played by Jurgen Prochnow. So while they're talking, doing this man is approaching the window of the diner, brandishes an axe, and probably in like one of the most famous scenes in the movie, certainly one of the most iconic, breaks the glass with his axe, jumps up on the diner table, looks Sam Neill in the face and says, "Do you read Sutter Kane?"
I love
It
the
was really
double
intense.
irises that they use for the contacts.
Yeah, that
for
They
was
look
people
cool.
that are
real.
possessed.
That
They're good.
I had to do a double take on it because usually with eye contacts, you can always tell when someone's wearing contacts that'll do that. And in his, it didn't look like CGI either. And for the episode poster for this week or for this month, that's one of the screenshots I'm using. And just super close up, it looks fucking real. I don't know how they did that.
I like that I could tell in the medium and wide shots that there's something was weird going on with his eyes, but I couldn't quite tell what it was until the
far
close-up
away,
reveal.
It looks just like his pupil iris, the color in his eye is just really wide until it's get that super zoom in and you realize that it's there's like two of them in each eye.
What if you got all the way there and he's like, "Do you read Sutter Kane?" And Trent was like, "No." And he's like, "Well, you should." Anyway,
That's good. I think
so
he
you're a
didn't
pie
want him
guy,
to.
Trent, or
He just sits down. So what are we talking about? Pies and cakes? Oh, let's get into this.
could have used the door. I hate doors.
They just start a podcast right there. So after the man, attacked is the wrong word because he really just broke the glass and asked him a
It was
question.
vandalism. Up
It
until
was
that
assault.
point.
I mean,
Yeah.
he did wield the axe at him.
Menacingly.
He did have that axe in a pretty menacing way. I don't know. But the man who breaks into the diner is immediately shot by police, who I can only imagine watched him walking across the street with the axe and then entered the diner as a way to cut him off.
But yeah, I have to assume that both of them were there, like, at the diner, sitting there eating pie or something. And it's, whoa, I forgot. We have to do our job.
So the man of the axe is later revealed to be Kane's literary agent, who had actually gone insane after reading one of Kane's novels. Excuse me. Specifically the one that he had just... he didn't just finish writing. He was working on it when he went missing. We then transition to Arcane Publishing, where we get to meet Linda Stiles, played by Julie Carmen, and our good friend, spacing on his name, Charlton Heston, who is the, I guess, president, owner, it's not specified, but like the head honcho of the publishing company. Because it seems like, not sure if it was the axe-wielding maniac or just the challenge that Sam Neill decides that he's going to take this case on, that he wants to look into this. He thinks it's a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo, but he's curious enough to take it, or maybe they're just paying him well enough.
Yeah, it's like also the fact that it's like you're a freelance insurance investigator. You kind of have a real tight niche that you should follow up on this. Which also
I turned down
that's weird.
cases
So
left and right.
Yeah, Robinson is trying to hire him, but if Robinson runs an insurance company, do they not have guys on their payroll who do the fraud investigation? Why do they need to outsource fraud investigation for an insurance company?
They just like
Do they
him
just-
a
I mean,
lot
maybe
more.
none of it. It's like none of the in-house guys are that good.
Yeah,
I guess.
I think so.
We are hemorrhaging money.
It's like you wouldn't believe the number of fires that take place right after people take out insurance policies.
How many spouses die directly after we pay out so much money? Or before we... yeah.
Yeah.
So-
So in this little meeting at the publishing company, we get a little bit of an exposition dump about Sutter Kane and his books. This is where we learn that Sutter Kane is the best-selling author like in the world. His books have been translated into 8 languages, sold worldwide, and that the books claim to have a strange power over the people who read them, claiming that it affects them on a deeply emotional and mental level, basically making them go crazy, see things, do things.
They specify
and of course
only the unstable fans or something.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, people who are like prone to it or something.
like
In a nicer way,
it
it's
affects
like
his crazy fans.
Like simpler people, he kind of said in a nicer way.
Real salt of the earth. You know, morons.
I have a question though. Do you guys? I don't think any of us really like read or would be considered avid readers. But if you've ever read a horror novel, do you guys actually get like scared or? Because that impact
No.
never really. It doesn't hit me. Like I don't understand how some people read books and they're like, pin drop and they'll freak out and like what was that? Like the feeling of dread while watching a movie does not translate while reading to me.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I'd consider myself an avid reader, but I do read a lot, and I do specifically like horror novels more than most other things.
I've never read something,
and I don't know if I would ever be like, I mean, clearly you're never gonna get. Well, that's not true. I've gotten jump scared in a book. I didn't know that.
You got? Was there a music sting?
No, it
Oh, it
was
was
actually
bold.
super cool. It was super cool. So there's a bookstore near me that I absolutely love. I don't know if yeah, but like I love horror
He
novels.
thought if he
and
was
I
going to
picked
give
one
them a
up.
plug, and then he's like, "Nah, I'm not giving them free press."
Wasn't that? I was like, didn't want to get their name partially wrong. After saying like, oh, this is a bookstore I love. They're called
Narns and
Bookstore.
Boble.
Pig. No, it's Flying Pig Books. And I remember I picked it up and I brought it to the counter, and she said, "Oh, I loved this. I loved this one." After I finished reading it, I just stood up from the couch and just stared into middle space for a while.
You have to send me
And I
what
was like-
that book is later.
And I was like, "Wow, that is a good book." It's called This Thing Between Us.
I don't know that. I'm
And
interested.
it's the only horror novel I ever read that had a jump scare that was effective.
Huh.
And I guess I was gonna say I don't want to spoil it, but like I don't know if I can that feels strange. But essentially, like
They put a spider on a
Without
spring
really-
on page 110.
It's a literal
without
pop-up.
spoiling it, like the character encounters like something that's written, and it's like pretty far into the book where they've really got the sense of dread, and then all of a sudden like you turn the page and it's mimicking what he's seeing, and it is a really well integrated piece of like design and how it's written.
That's cool.
That is just really unnerving and incredibly surprising.
We at some point off air we should talk more. I didn't realize you read horror books. We should exchange.
I love horror writing. It's my favorite way to I want to say ingest, but that's not the right word, but to like ingest horror. Like that's my favorite way.
With
I
your
could see
eyes.
myself. I get so scared at. Well, I mean, I get scared at horror movies. I could see internalizing that and imagining that in a horror book and being just as like unnerved and like I don't want to go to the bathroom in the dark kind of feeling.
Well, I think it really just depends on the level of your imagination. Because I mean, if
So
you're
you're
not
s-
an imaginative person,
So
I'm
you're saying
sure
Nick
you could read
Nick is
anything
not
and just be like,
imaginative.
"Huh."
Nick is unimaginative, is what you're saying.
Well, it's not. It's not. I mean, I don't. Horror movies don't get me either, and it, like
Yeah.
I wouldn't say less than imaginative. I don't know. It's just I'm always on the lookout for a movie that will genuinely get me scared, and the most they'll do is either I'll get really unnerved, but it's very particular on the movies that can even pull that off. Like there's a few like 8mm is not a horror movie, but I will never watch it again because it literally fucked me up in the head of just the whole plot line for that entire movie. And then when I watch other shit like
Good.
Terrifier, Nightmare Before Christmas, Nightmare on Elm Street, all the horror stuff as a kid,
Terrifier, Nightmare Before Christmas,
just them scary clowns. But like
that 1-2 punch.
it doesn't do anything for me because I know
Yeah.
either the people make piss poor decisions or the plot line is so ridiculous that it's how can you get scared from this? Like I understand phobia stuff like arachnophobia, Jaws, all the stuff that could potentially happen and are somewhat real based in reality, but all the supernatural stuff like meh. I don't know.
Well, I think also just as being avid film fans, but also we watch the stuff to know how the sausage is made of, well, the effects are cool and how they did the makeup and all of this, that it automatically puts that spacer between you and the movie that it's sometimes difficult to get fully lost in the film to end up actually feeling a scare. So it always ends up being like, oh, you got me at a jump scare because it's startled because of a noise, not because it's like, wow, that was really scary.
Yeah.
But you
And
can still enjoy it.
I applaud movies at this point too that can get me on a jump scare. Most of them
Yeah.
are so choreographed that it's just you can almost count it down at 3, 2, 1, jump, and then
I get every jump scare works on me. Alien Romulus. Every time that they did a jump scare, I mean, I startle. It always works on me.
I find them often cheap.
I mean, I'm not saying I like it, but I always jump. Like I can't
Yeah.
help it.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure I do too. I mean, I don't like them because they do feel like cheap and like little annoyances where I'm just like, ah.
Like some of them are well crafted, but then other times it just ends up being like the lowest hanging fruit is just like keep hitting them with jump scares. I think this one more than any other John Carpenter work makes use of jump scares. There's at least like 8 points
Yep.
in this film that he uses it that it ends up feeling very cheap. So I don't know if it was just like, hey, I'm running out of tricks in that bag, or it was, here's some points that
Yeah,
we'll
it's
try
like
to really drive it up.
shadow passing in the foreground, huge jarring music sting. It's like that was a little too much.
So yeah, we get this kind of exposition dump. We find out that Kane's books have an effect on, less mentally there people. And so despite all of the kind of eerie account that is going on around the room, people talking about how influential Kane's books are, Sam Neill remains convinced that Kane's disappearance is just a publicity stunt being done by the publisher, and he thinks this whole thing is pretty silly. But he is convinced that maybe he should at least read some of Kane's work to kind of get an idea of what they're talking about. So we see Trent, he goes to a bookstore, and bookstores in this universe are just always filled with people. Like, most of the time you go to like a small bookstore or like a large chain like Barnes & Noble, and there's like, I don't know, a handful of people. Sam Neill goes in this bookstore, and it is like 1995 Blockbuster Saturday night.
Well, I mean, this
feel
was
the amount of people.
this was the '90s, David, before the internet. So
Yeah, I feel like back in the day, going to like a Walden Books or Barnes and Noble, it was busy. And then depending on what aisle or what type of stuff you're looking for, it's like, yeah, you can run into like 6 or 7 people also perusing. Bring back bookstores. I
The
miss
bookstore
those.
was kind of like Dan Flash's.
well,
in
Tim,
this-
they
in this
unlike
universe.
Blockbuster, they still exist.
Oh yeah, they're just harder to come by. Like all of the Barnes and Noble in our area closed. We have like one within 30 miles of us.
Oh, no
There's no like there's one mom and pop bookstore that's within like a 30-minute drive. Support local bookstores.
I do have to say though, I like that Tim was trying to amp up how popular and busy bookstores was, and he said he saw a whole 6 or 7 people.
Well, in an aisle.
In an aisle.
So Sam Neill's perusing books. He's picking up some of Kane's work, and this rando who I don't think he worked there even just comes up to Sam Neill and says like, he can see you, you know. And Sam Neill, in the only response to that line, is tell him I say hi. Which I was just like, that's so good.
is good.
As like him just playing like a literal straight man, just being like, all right, tell him I say hi. So yeah, he picks up a number of Kane's books and he heads back to his home, apartment, hard to tell, so that he can go and get some reading done. And we see that, like, despite his like really level-headedness, the books are affecting him a little bit. He gets a little nervous. I think he gets jump scared when his phone rings, but he's making his way through the books. And as he's going through the books,
I was confused on that because I didn't know whether he was hallucinating or if if he was reading it and he was envisioning himself, or if those were actually things that were happening as he was walking, home every night.
Well, the first one was, so when he was either going home from the bookstore or going to the bookstore, when he sees the cop beating up the guy in the alley with the people watching, that was the real occurrence. So then when he ends up having the dream of the monster cop beating that guy up in there with the "you want some too, buddy," which, monster or not, if a monster face turns around and says "you want some too, buddy" in like a New York cop accent.
Oh, hey, I told you them. Actually, no, we probably cut that line out. Never mind. The police brutality in the diner scene before.
want some too, buddy? Tell him I said hi.
Sam Neill just like reloads his wrists like Henry Cavill in Mission Impossible and just runs into the alley.
See, that's who we need. We need Henry Cavill in the remake of this. Just
Actually,
I don't take shit from anybody.
That actually might not be bad.
I investigate insurance and throw hands, and I'm all out of insurance.
And I paint custodes in my downtime.
I used to
King of the Nerds.
I used to graffiti artist, do graffiti as well. This man is my brother.
As we get a double jump scare of the monster cop scaring him, then he wakes up to turn his head to another monster cop.
I mean, to be fair, this movie had a lot of waking up from a dream to only wake up from a dream to only wake up from a dream.
Which, to me, like, it was more effective when he used that in Prince of Darkness of the get scared out of a dream to then find out you're still in the dream. And then to follow that up with that same gag in this movie
All that was missing was Freddy
loses
Krueger.
some of its effectiveness. Wait, what was that?
All that was missing was Freddy Krueger to be there.
Although I don't even know if... I'm trying to recall, like, did Freddy Krueger even pull that gag of the dream within a dream? Or he was just like, who's got the time?
It's low-hanging fruit. I'd be shocked if they didn't.
Yeah. Which, the thing that made this scene awkward is when he pulled it in Prince of Darkness, they did it quick. So you end up, and you turn and it's there, and then you scare awake again. This, they held it a little too long. So it's like, and he turns and he's there, and it's like, and a beat, and a beat, and a beat, and then it's, and then he wakes up again, that it's just awkward. Well, he's not reacting. It's just the monster cop's just kind of also there, where it's more like you fell asleep when we were watching a movie, and now you just realized that I'm still in the house.
Yeah, so I mean, they do this a couple of times, and it does hang long there.
Yeah.
So when Trent does, or Sam Neill, when he does wake from his weird dream thing, he does notice something weird about all the covers of the books. And then this is when he decides to just go ham on scissors and, I wanted to say paper mache, but not paper mache. Just his craft project of tearing apart the books because he sees that they're creating some type of pattern. And this is when Sam Neill starts to go all... I mean, honestly, like crazy bananas. Like, this is like full-on
Pepe Sylvia
conspiracy
stuff.
theory.
Like the fact that he goes to the publisher house and then he shows them the map of New England. He's like, look, I pieced together all of these book covers and it forms New Hampshire. And it's got to be dead center where the town is. And he's got like the clear laminate to go over to show New England and how perfectly it fits. Like, I felt he was crazy at this point. And all the monsters and stuff haven't even showed up yet, and this is the first sign.
What if...
I mean, I was gonna say when he's cutting the covers and putting them together, I was like, I could just find 4 random books and cut the covers in a way that it looks like New Hampshire. Like,
yeah, because
that's not like a skill.
I didn't immediately notice any sort of pattern on the book covers. So to me, when he was cutting it, it's like, wait, so you just cut them to match New Hampshire? The first thing that I realized when he put it on the board and he was like, and look at this, was... New Hampshire's a lot bigger than I thought it was.
Was that like...
I even freeze framed it, and I was just like, I don't see what you're seeing. Like, you cut it out in the shape of New Hampshire, but like, do you just want to go to New Hampshire?
And
like,
without the dot on there, if he's like, and this dot is Hobbs End, it's like, without the dot, it's just, and I found him. He's in New Hampshire. That doesn't narrow it down, buddy.
It's like, that's a big state.
You're one guy. This is going to be a while.
No, it's not a big... Well... I mean, it's not a big state, though, because what gets me is that it takes them, 12 hours to go from New York City to New Hampshire? That's like a 4-hour drive at most.
It is a 4-hour drive.
And I don't...
especially, like, I'm trying to think, like, from... Well, New York, though. I'm thinking Boston, because of how many times I make that trip from
But
Vermont.
still, well, I mean, it's weird,
They
because
didn't-
when we visited you from Connecticut, it was faster than going from Boston.
They didn't build interstate highways, though, until like 1996. So there was all back roads.
It was all cobblestone.
I mean, they took the scenic route, clearly, based on where you see them driving. I'm like, guys, I don't know where these wheat fields are you're driving.
I was going to
but
say,
like,
they pass like cornfields and whatnot, and I was thinking, like, I know there's corn mazes at, like, when you're doing apple picking sometimes in the fall, but I never think about the New Hampshire cornfields.
because I'm just thinking, like, if you're going from New York City to New Hampshire,
You take
like,
Connecticut, You're taking 95.
You're gonna go through Connecticut. You're gonna see Hartford, New Haven, like. Then you're gonna go through Massachusetts, like you're gonna see Springfield.
Yeah.
Like you get into New Hampshire, you're gonna go through Lebanon. Like these are cities. But yeah, I'm thinking. So like I have family who lives in New York City, and I think it takes them like 6.5, 7 to get to us in Burlington, which we are significantly farther north than dead center New Hampshire. So I don't know.
I don't know. That was a pet peeve.
A lot of time spent on the geography of this road trip. Every listener that's not a New
he spent a
Englander
lot
is
of time
like,
trying to map.
Well, as a New Englander, it's just how do you get lost going from New York City to New Hampshire? That's just like how the hell do you get lost? It's so you have like 4 different ways you can go, and I feel like
you get on one highway, go straight, and then take a left at some point, and then go straight.
Yeah, you don't even have to go left. I feel like they intentionally took every time it said go right, he went left instead. There's no cornfield.
This is a New
in
England road trip made by people who live in California.
Yeah.
The car only turns left. I don't understand. So yeah, he makes this really non-functional map to find a town that doesn't exist nor appears on any map, but he believes is in the center of New Hampshire.
Well, his argument, they're like, that's not a town on any map. And he's like, not any current map, but old maps maybe. It's like, no, it's not on old maps either.
This is just a thing you made in your fever dream. It's you're already losing it a little bit. But regardless, Sam Neill and Stiles set out on their road trip to find Hobb's End. Fun fact, Hobbs is actually a old term that means the devil.
So the little comic with the little boy and the pet tiger, it's really Calvin and the devil.
Mm-hmm.
Which I wonder if that's where you get like the term like hobgoblin. Is hob
could be
derived from, I don't know.
I don't know.
So this road
Or
trip
like
was interesting.
hobnobbing.
Yeah, this was also full of jump scares.
Including the one where he wakes Linda up by blasting an air horn next door.
I like how he had it just at the
I-
ready in his glove box.
Guy's such an asshole. So as they're driving through the night, strange occurrences begin to happen, and I don't even know how to say this. It's like it's almost Groundhog's Day, but like of a 10-minute period.
And that happens a lot through this movie too, because you're
They
watching
do
a scene,
eeriness well.
yeah, and it keeps repeating certain scenes and it almost play by play, and it's starting to make you feel like you're going crazy because like, wait, what's going on? Where's the actual timeline of events? Because it's not even like you can clearly tell they're in the beginning of the highway or like in one segment, and then there's a progression of travel and they're in a different segment. No, like when the thing repeats, it's like it's almost watching the same exact scene again in the same exact spot. So when they pass by that biker a few times, it's like, is it the kid? Is it this weird old guy? Like, what the hell is going on here with it?
But
Yeah, this is a movie I would say don't eat dinner and watch. Because I don't
Looking
think
down?
anything would make sense
Oh, yeah.
between looking down
Right.
and looking back up.
I was going to be like, well, I don't think it's gory. It's like, oh no, that would make sense. Of like, do not avert your gaze.
I understood.
Yeah,
what
because
you
like
mean.
I watched it twice, and I mean not
Back to
because I
back.
had to watch it again because I wanted more mystery, but because one for taking notes and one to actually enjoy it. But like when I was watching it to enjoy it, I was eating dinner, and like I had to keep rewinding it because I'd be like, wait, what? And you're like, it's like, how were we here? Wasn't it nighttime?
Yeah, it is such a good eerie shot though of just her looking off into like the blackness of the road and then just the figure biking. They do that a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of like it's a
Yeah,
lot of
very-
good
very
creepy
good.
stuff. Then you could excuse some of the cheap jump scary stuff because it's like, okay, well, we also have some eerie stuff going on that is also effective.
When he fades off into the behind them and the brake lights, that was awesome. It's a really cool little sequence.
Yeah,
I will say the first time we visited you, David, in Vermont, I kind of understand that tunnel vision because it's like
Oh man, nighttime driving up
because
here.
there's like a segment from Connecticut to Vermont, and I think it's either in Vermont or New Hampshire, one of the two, where you're just going straight at this point for 100 miles, and then instead of winter, there's no lights around you, and all you see is just the stripes and there's nothing else, and it's like the same visual for a good like 40 minutes straight, maybe an hour, and you really do kind of start to lose it a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, that drive can be Creepsville. I remember at one point, Michelle had some friends that were coming up to visit, and it was their first time coming up, and like they were doing the drive at night, and they needed to get gas, so they pulled off the highway. But a fun fact about most towns in Vermont is that gas stations will remain open, like the pumps will be open, but if the store is closed, they just shut off all the lights. So you'll get to the gas station, and the only lights that are on are the little LED, the displays on the actual gas pumps.
That's really good to know.
So you just,
because I always kept driving
so
by because I thought they were closed.
yeah. So you just pull up to a pitch black gas station with the screen on,
Scariest
and it's
gas
like, yeah, they're
pump.
technically open, but they keep their lights off. Yeah, kind of creepy.
So then Linda hits a guy with her car.
Yeah, because we see the bicyclist go by several times, which I think he's like aging each time they go by.
I think just the one
until
time.
eventually.
Yeah,
Wait,
he
what?
goes from
I think he
18
gets-
to like 76 in the span of a
And
frame.
he's just
His
80
entire
the rest of the
life.
movie.
Yeah, so kept going by, and then eventually Linda hits them.
But that's the double take though, because when I think when he got up and he like starts driving away because like, oh my God, we hit a person, you know, let's call. There's no cell phones. We'll call police when we get to town. But then like
Yeah, sure you are.
You hear the kid like get up, and it's still the kid's voice, but it's clearly the elderly man that's riding the bike, which was like blink and you miss it. Because there's so many of those scenes where that's exactly what happens.
Which,
Well, because the kid / old man also has this whole thing where he says that he won't let me leave.
yeah, it's like I
Yeah.
can't get out. He won't let me out. Which could kind of be creepy in the fact that, which I don't think they really get into overall in the movie on how terrifying a concept that could be of just because you chose to come in this direction, it's now out of your hands. Like, it's not, well, if I do X, Y, Z and I'll get away. It's, no, you already lost as soon as you got here. And now it's just if he decides, I'll let you back out, you're just stuck in this loop over and over and over again. But I don't think they give time for that dread to set in because it's like monsters and creatures. And it's like, no, the loop itself is terrifying.
Yeah, when we get to the, like, I guess the big reveal of the movie, like, it has so many more implications that they could have gone into.
Yeah.
If they allowed the runtime to go. But like, again, like, it's 1995. We didn't really have that many like 2-hour movies at that point. Like, movies were still pretty tight on time. Not like now where like if a movie's not 2.5 hours, you're like, what is this?
Well, I think specifically, like, especially horror movies, we're not sitting at like 2+ hours. It was just like, it's a tight 80 to 90 minutes. You're in and out. Thrills, chills, and get out of the theater.
And that's why you watch it twice, back to back. So after the driving mishap, Sam Neill eventually falls back asleep, and we get this really weird scene where at some point the lines on the road disappear, and it looks like they're like passing through a dreamlike tunnel.
Yeah, it's like flying.
Yeah, flying
it
through the
it
clouds.
almost looked very like sci-fi-y, like they were getting abducted by a spaceship kind of thing.
Where
That
they're
would've been a
going,
turn.
they don't need roads.
They get abducted by aliens, and it's like, okay, so all that stuff with Sutter Kane is now completely out of the way.
It's a different
feel like-
movie
yeah.
starts.
This is a different movie now. They got abducted by aliens.
They finally escape the alien ship, get back to Earth, and find that Sutter Kane has taken over.
It's been 140 years.
Planet of the Cades.
And so I love this scene because they exit the tunnel, and the tunnel has now just become a regular covered bridge in a quaint little New Hampshire town, and it is daytime. And so the car, Stiles stops the car very suddenly because she's confused because all of a sudden it's daytime, and they're in a town when she was in a weird tunnel. And the jerking motion of the car wakes up Sam Neill. And I just love Sam Neill's first response, like, oh, it's daytime. You drove through the night. Thanks.
The little
Our 17-hour drive to New Hampshire.
The little town reminds me of the one from Beetlejuice, especially with the the red bridge.
I like the
Oh, yeah.
town in this. So evidently that town, if anybody wants to go to the location, is Unionville in Markham, Ontario, just outside of Toronto. And it looks like a fun, cute little town. I mean, even the cathedral that they go to, like the dark church, real location. It's the Cathedral of the Transfiguration in that town.
Yeah, I remember looking up, and I was actually kind of sad that it was in Canada. I was just like, oh, like I was beginning to think like, oh, it's like maybe it is New Hampshire. Like maybe I can go visit this.
Yeah, I was planning on like, oh, I'll drive to this, and then it's like, oh, it's up in outside of Toronto. It's like, could I drive to this?
Toronto's,
I could,
like, far.
but it's not like we'll make a weekend of it. It's like, nah, that requires a plan.
Yeah, the Beetlejuice one's a lot easier. That's like up in East Cornwall, not too far from me.
So, listeners, if you want to visit the Beetlejuice town, David will put you up. Just let him know in advance.
It's free.
I just remember when they started production on it, there was a whole problem because people kept sneaking up to it and stealing stuff.
As they do.
Yeah, I mean, if you figure out where they're filming, yeah, of course you will.
Goddamn Vermonters.
Hollywood isn't prepared for him. They subsist on a handful of granola, and they just hide in the woods, stealing our props.
I like granola. It's good. It's tasty on yogurt.
Point made. As David's background fails on him on this Discord, and we just see all the Beetlejuice props behind him.
Got like all of Lydia's like sculptures that she made
yeah.
in the kitchen. Or not Lydia's, the mom. So Sam Neill wakes up and he's delighted both that it's daytime and he doesn't have to drive again. And also that, oh my God, they're in Hobbs End. How did that happen? Amazing, you found it.
They crossed the Rainbow Bridge.
Yeah, he's like, oh, we're here. It's Hobbs End. And it's like, you found the town that doesn't exist except for my make-believe map.
Put it that
I'll
way.
be honest, I was faking this for billable hours, but here we are.
Could you imagine if that's what it is? Because he thought this was a hoax, so he's just like, yeah, whatever.
Double hoax.
They're paying my travel.
He's actually the fraudster.
So upon arriving to Hobbs End, they see a small child on a bicycle. And I can't remember the question they ask him, but hey, it's Hayden Christensen in his first ever movie appearance.
Wait, he shows up this early?
Wait, what?
No, he shows
Wait.
up at the end of the movie.
No, I thought he was here.
No,
What?
they,
No, not yet.
Don't they-
when they arrive, she turns, like, he's checking out a store or, like, looking through the window, and then she looks to the corner and she sees, like, a dog running away. And then once the dog clears view, she sees, like, a whole slew of children running behind it. And then she goes up to him, like, did you see all those kids? And he's like, what kids?
Oh, I thought it was here.
Nope, it's at the end of the movie.
Yeah, when he escapes the town with the manuscript, that's
Yeah, I
when he
don't
meets
think-
him.
I don't think Hayden's in Hobbs
right.
End.
That's my bad. Okay.
And he's like,
I do
young
remember that
sir,
now.
and he's like, I'm Hayden Christensen. And
That's
I'm like,
right.
oh, that's weird. In the
Have you
context, but still.
have you seen any kids around here? No, sir, I killed them. I killed them all. Not just the men, but the women too.
I hate sand, by the way.
Not bring any sand around here.
There's a sand-free zone, sir. So they arrive in Hobbs End, and it's basically like a deserted ghost town. Or at least that's the impression that I think we're supposed to get as they start to like drive through it and looking around.
It seems a bit like
But
Silent
Styles,
Hill.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
and that
Styles
there's
and-
there's characters there, and you might encounter them somewhere, but otherwise it's deserted.
Very much NPCs, because as they're going around, Styles starts to recognize like landmarks and small buildings and things from Kane's stories, and Trent dismisses it as, or Sam Neill dismisses it as coincidence and purely part of the hoax.
Which, this is where I think when we were talking about we needed more time to breathe in the investigation part of this, because having this town so empty that as soon as you get there, it's not, oh, well, it's seems normal, let's investigate. It's like, no, as soon as you show up, immediately it's, oh, something's weird going on here.
But
That I
only
think
it
they
affects
needed
her,
more
though.
time to bleed in. Well, I think it only affects her because we're not treated to Sam Neill realizing anything. He's just oblivious to the fact that, oh yeah, it's a normal small town, no people in it except one person at the inn, and nobody else exists, and all the doors are dark, and all the windows are empty, and
There's a giant black Byzantine church in the center of this town, and the woman at the end fits exactly the description of one of Kane's novels about a woman who kills her husband and chains him in the basement.
yeah, a classic Russian Orthodox church in the middle of New Hampshire, next to the cornfields.
All the times. I mean, it's kind of like, I can't remember who just mentioned Silent Hill, but like, it makes me wish that we got like that Silent Hill movie lead up. Because I think in the Silent Hill movie, we got so much of that, like, just exploring and wandering around and, like, seeing the town and, like, how creepy it was.
Like, you get to seep in, or, like, you sit in that atmosphere for a while before they start introducing all the rest of it, which...
Yeah, even like, the Sean Bean side in that movie, where he's, like, going to the town records and, a remake of this, Sean Bean as Trent...
That'd be good.
That'd be
well,
good.
In some movies, too, especially like Silent Hill, the town itself is a character. And at least they were smart enough to know to place emphasis on it instead of just kind of a quick one and done and that's it.
Sorry if I'm being naive, but is that church, is that a real place? That wasn't, I mean, none of that was like a set.
It's the Cathedral of the Transfiguration in Markham, Ontario. You take a bus from Toronto there. But it's just like a field in front of it that's just like empty space by itself. Now I think off in the distance, where in this it's like completely empty.
Skyscrapers, probably.
Off in the distance now there's like apartments and things like that, but
like
it's still a good chunk of land. Yeah, there's a Starbucks drive-through right in view of the cathedral.
Yeah, you're right. It's Tim Hortons.
It is creepy to see, even if this structure, like, nothing was changed and this is exactly how it appears in real life. At the time of 1994, 3, whatever this was filmed, it's creepy as hell to just see this massive structure surrounded by nothing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So weirdly out of place. I do love the little scene where, like, Sam Neill looks out the window and he's like, oh, yeah, well, where's the Black Byzantine church? And she's like, well, it always faces out of the east. And she just opens it and it's like, ta-da.
Oh yeah, she's like, oh, you should have read deeper. It's out of it's like the Simpsons bit of like, oh, it appears there's more dust still.
How to cook 40 people.
For 40 people. Oh, okay.
It's just that I forgot that it was on the other side of the house. Not that I need to read deeper.
It's like, I got scared, okay?
She throws the window open. It's not on that side. And he's like, you have to read even deeper. It's actually on the north side. There's no window there, and he just punches a hole in the wall.
I knew that you would try to
Reloads
best
his
me.
arms, punches another.
I knew you'd try to best me, so I intentionally said the wrong direction first.
So now that they've located the Black Church, this is going to be basically where they're going to start looking, which is unfortunate because this is kind of the start and end of the investigation.
Hey, I'm looking for that church. It's out this window. No, it's not. It's this one. Okay, investigation over. There's the church. Looks evil.
Yeah, because after this, they go and head out to the Black Church, which is always like a pivotal piece in Kane's novels. It's it's a pretty creepy church. It's I don't know. I mean, I think we talked enough about it. It's pretty weird. And they go up to it and they try and open it, and their first reaction is, oh, the doors are locked. And I'm like, oh man, here we go, more investigation. And then all of a sudden they get ambushed by townspeople
who just happen to be storming the church at that time.
Which, I mean, this is also like kind of classic like H.P. Lovecraft thing. Like, oh no, the church, you can't go in the church. Like, I thought this was going to be like the rowdy mob scene, like attack them.
Yeah.
At least originally.
Well, it's a lot of like twisting of religious symbols and things like that, of like, oh, it's the dark religious cult of Cthulhu, or like all of these various things that I don't know. I admittedly am not deep into the Lovecraft mythos. I'm an admirer from afar, but I haven't read all of like his works and all of the other authors who've done it over the years. But it seems to be a running thing of the bastardization of religion in it.
Yeah, I've read a lot of his stuff. Like, it kind of got me interested in reading horror. I will say some of his early stuff is real. It was a different time, and he was not a nice person.
You can say it. H.P. Lovecraft was racist.
He's a lot of his original work kind of stemmed from his misunderstanding of non-Christian religion. And everything non-Christian to him was barbaric and bad, essentially. Yeah. So he based a lot of his early work on the idea of like, if you're non-Christian, you're this abhorrent thing. He eventually, I don't think he came around. I just think he refined his writing in a way where it may have not been quite as obvious as that's what he was doing, or maybe he just started to leave some of those trends behind. On a side note, another great author who is in that vein is Robert W. Chambers, who famously wrote the the collection called The King in Yellow, which is a fantastic collection of short stories, which H.P. Lovecraft actually said is what inspired him to start writing existential horror. So cannot recommend The King in Yellow more. Super good. So good. But yeah, there's actually a really cool inscription on the church. I think in the movie it's like inscribed in Latin, but the inscription on the church in the front doors says that "Let these doors be sealed by our Lord God, and let any who dare enter this unholy site be damned forever," which is telling.
It's actually the top of every church I've ever been to.
I didn't know it had the first part. I saw the second part, and just whoever enters this be damned. Like, oh shit, they don't fuck around in this church.
Nah. Which when the townspeople show up and the doors fly open and you see that little kid, you're like, bro, it's not going well for you. Because it does seem like Sutter Kane has like some kind of hold on the children, which sounds bad, but it is bad.
Well, yeah, because the character Simon, Wilhelm von Homburg, even says it came and it took the children first, and now it's infecting us. That makes sense. You would attack the most susceptible to, I guess, the insanity and the dreams and all of this stuff. And then once you have that locked in, it's so much easier to go after all the others. Although, even knowing this, he shows up and he's like, we have to storm the church and kill Sutter Kane. And then the doors open. He's like, hey, my Johnny boy.
It's like, Johnny.
Simon, pay attention. I forgot.
Sutter Kane was like, wait, why did I write them trying to kill me? Shit.
So we soon realized that the crazed mob is not there to stop them from going to church. It was to basically get back this guy's kid who has been taken into the church and stolen by Sutter Kane. And Sutter Kane responds by sicking a whole bunch of Dobermans after them.
You know, I wonder too,
which apparently,
if he obviously he wrote all of this. So did he intentionally write them to storm the castle just to run away and be attacked by dogs just to scare the shit out of them?
I wonder if he like has control, but like not 100%.
Yeah, because I think it's as the movie goes on, Simon seems more and more like I'm a character to him, and I wonder if that's the infection he's talking about. Of they weren't in control yet, but they're getting deeper and deeper in that they feel loss of self. And at this point, it's just like, hey, I can sick dogs on you using my imagination, but I can't tell you to just like go away and you just go away. It would have been better if instead of dogs, you expect some big magic thing. And he comes out and he just pulls a pistol out of his back pocket.
I was going to say, it's like
unlimited ammo. I wrote it in.
I can conjure up nightmares, but Dobermans are much more effective and efficient. Go get him.
We're here to get Sutter Kane. Come and get me, you son of a bitch. And he just starts firing.
He's got a gun.
You idiot, we've all got guns.
Only shotguns.
Hampshire.
Though, so I was really surprised that it's like, wait, so all of you only have double barrel shotguns?
And they're sawed off.
I mean, 1995. If it was now, they'd all have AR-15s with bump stocks.
Oh, it's sad but true.
Sutter Kane
like,
opens
"Go,
the
my
doors,
Dobermans."
sees
They're like,
all of that,
"Dobermans."
and he's like, oh.
It's like they send the Dobermans. Like, I can saw a man in half with this. So the Dobermans come after them, and the townspeople run because I guess they're dog fans, and nobody wants to kill a dog, regardless of like a dog coming after you. I mean, you don't want to.
They just form a firing line of shotguns.
They also didn't all have guns. Like, I think like 3 of them did. There was like definitely one guy there who just had like a piece of wood.
Probably because he
Simon-
wasn't originally in on it. They just passed him on the way in. He's like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, oh, we're headed to the church. Okay.
It's like, yeah, that sounds good. Nothing's going on in town with all 4 of us who live here.
We're going to get Simon's kid. What about our kids? We'll get to him.
It's like, they're out playing. What are you talking about? Yeah, but they're crazy now. See that one girl's face?
New Hampshire.
The inner Vermont-New Hampshire rivalry is starting to come out in me. So eventually, Trent and Styles do confront Sutter Kane in the church. And this is when we get our second exposition dump, I believe, of the movie. And Kane explains that his writing isn't, in fact, fiction.
Wait,
It looks like Tim wants to interrupt me.
I'm interrupting because that jumps like 4 scenes.
Yeah, I was confused what you're talking about.
Because they run away when they start attacking the church. And they see this happen, but then they go back
you're
to
right.
the inn.
Oh, and that's when we get the reveal that she actually has her husband in chains.
Yeah, because we don't find that
She has
until
to-
later.
She talks. This is where they have the scene where she admits, like, yeah, we did this as a stunt, but now it's
Oh.
real.
We trained
I
him
hate
wrong
that
on
scene
purpose.
so much.
I thought that part needed a little bit more. I was like, wait, that's a huge thing, like, that you're dropping. I mean, I know everything is. She might not even be real, but like, it's a huge thing they're dropping, and it's like, yeah. It was all a stunt, but it's real. It's like, wait a minute.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was a big thing that I think I missed the first time I saw this movie years ago is, well, you're setting this up just to boost sales of this guy, and he goes missing, and that's going to really drum up business. And then, yeah, she says, like, yes, it was originally a hoax. The plan was to just have him go off somewhere and disappear for a little while and lay low to drive sales. But then he actually didn't come back, and we lost contact with him, and that's what started this. And that's supposed to help her explain the situation of, like, that's why this is all crazy, is we had a plan, it was fake, and now this isn't following the plan.
The only thing is, though, is that, like, I think maybe I just forget about that scene because it doesn't make any sense. Because, like, there's no reporters, no one is following them. Like, to have a publicity stunt
Well,
where no one shows up to talk about it.
well, the goal was he was going to be the unbiased, like, the skeptic of the insurance investigator goes, sees all this, and then goes back and is like, everything's crazy up in Hobbs End.
Well, no, but they were.
I own a
the
town
whole thing
up
was
in the
that
middle of
they
New
were,
Hampshire.
They were never supposed to find Hobbs End, and that was the thing.
Oh, so they were just supposed to go. He was just supposed to investigate and be like, I can't find Sutter Kane.
Right.
And then that was going to be what drums the sale.
Right. That they hired an investigator to find a guy and then they don't find him, but it turned on her because they found him.
What kind of publicity is that, though? Of just like, well
that's
we
the
hired
thing
a
with
guy
it.
to
It's-
look for him, and then he couldn't find him. That's great. If
It was
every
just
guy who couldn't do his
plain old-
job was newsworthy, we'd have so much stuff.
Like, that's the thing that's confusing about it, is that, like, that publicity stunt doesn't rely on anything, really. They could have just wrote that story regardless.
True, yeah.
Without having to do anything.
Because Charlton Heston was greedy and he wanted insurance money. It's another big fraud.
But yeah, because at this point, this is when Linda starts getting more unhinged of she realizes that everything's in the book, and the new book is about the end of everything starting at Hobbs End. So then she starts like throwing herself at Trent, and then steals the car keys. And that's when he starts seeing like visions in the painting of now all of a sudden there's like things going on of a person in there. And that's when they end up finding the naked Mr. Pickman changed to Mrs. Pickman's leg.
Kinky.
When does she get? Now I'm getting all turned around. When does she get grabbed by Sutter? Because he sets all that stuff up. I thought.
After this scene.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, because he goes to the bar and explores the town.
And he has that conversation with
Simon.
what's his name?
Vigo.
Simon, thank you. I was gonna say you were like the buzzing of flies, dude. This is my favorite line in that whole movie.
Yeah, because I think at this point, this is when she's really starting to freak out, because we don't know until later on.
Yeah.
She's read most of the manuscript already, so she's kind of realizing everything
She's
that
primed.
she's read. She's like, this is actually happening. Because like when they show up in the inn originally, she's like, oh my god, this is just like his book. He's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, look at that painting. And then just as he steps, she's like, watch out for the loose floorboard. And that's when you see his toe like move the floorboard. And then at least he's still like skeptical and he doesn't really believe what's going on, but she's slowly like, I'm freaking out, man. She's really starting to
Her
lose it.
pupils entirely enlarged.
And if they had any kind of relationship, she probably would have said that to him. But these are two complete strangers.
Hey, they had the 17 hours driving up from New York to get to know each other.
Well, he was asleep for like almost half of it.
He slept for 14 hours straight in that car.
I mean, to be fair, if I got in a car with a complete stranger and we were supposed to do shifts, I fell asleep, and then he wakes me up with an air horn, I feel like I'd never talk to that person again. I just go home.
We're too unfamiliar
This is
for this to be
fucked up.
cute, Mr. Trent.
Yeah.
Well, it's also, he did try to like flirt with her earlier in the movie too.
Oh, right out
yeah,
of the
but
gate.
like that 1995 power creep way.
Yeah, like they meet each other and it's like, oh, this is Linda Stiles. And then they walk out of the room and then he does the like, put one arm against the wall and lean in next to the elevator and talks to her close.
Hey, do you want to go to a restaurant later and look at these files with me?
You want to do it?
In Hobbs End.
That's not a euphemism.
I was like, is it though?
It can be if you're into it. Meanwhile, Mrs. Pickman is into chains and shit.
So I guess the next part then would then be that Sam Neill ends up going back to the inn. He eventually falls asleep reading Sutter Kane, which I feel like he's just tempting fate with all of that. While Stiles goes back and investigates the church. She encounters some children. She explores around, notating how dirty the church is, which I thought was weird. That she's like walking around the basement of an old church and she's like doing the like check the window frame for dust thing.
She has like the white gloves.
Sutter Kane is terrible. House upkeep.
He's like, well, don't you have a cleaner?
You couldn't write a cleaner church. But yeah, like she meets the children with the one like demonic face. And she's like, who are you? And they're like, where's your parents? You're our mommy. And it's like, who takes care of her? You do. And today is mommy's day. And then moves into the church. It's like,
Bye.
if I saw that, I would be like, I'm going to quick change of plans. I'm going back to the inn and then I'm out of here.
Yeah. Instead, she goes into the church and has like a weird semi-erotica moment with Sutter Kane, a little reminiscent to me of Flash Gordon. That early scene with the Emperor gets weird, really weird, semi-erotic, which then turns to Sutter Kane just grabbing the back of her head and shoving her face into the manuscript, making her read it.
I mean, as a creative type, there are times where I want to do that. Hey, have you checked this out?
I mean, it's how we all read, right? And someone just shoves your face so close your eyes can't possibly focus.
It must have been a second draft because this had way much more of an effect than what she's already seen so far.
Well, I think originally it was just the first couple chapters.
Okay, gotcha.
Or he didn't
preview
proof it and it
chapters.
just wasn't very good. He was still workshopping it. And she gets to the end and
Wait,
he's
doesn't
like,
she make a joke?
and she's like, yeah.
Doesn't she make a joke about that at some point, like in the first church scene? or something. I feel like they made a joke about proofing it, but
That'd be so funny if it's like just all typos, punctuation errors, cross-outs.
It completely
it's like, wait, this story it's like, Sutter, this story goes nowhere. Don't you know it?
completely undermines the power of the book. Like,
Sutter,
I'm
not
distracted
in a
by
good
the
way.
typos.
I really have to edit this. And she sits down and works on it, and then she's like, perfect. And then her eyes bleed.
So Styles ends up leaving the church and going back to the motel, where she tries to really forcibly make out with Sam Neill. And Sam Neill, who's very confused about why this complete stranger is trying to make out with him, is kind of fighting off her advances. And she's like, he's writing me this way. He's telling me I have to kiss you.
I'm going to
Which
use
is probably
that
a line
excuse.
every woman in Hollywood has had for the past 30 years. Write better female characters, writers.
One thing I don't get throughout the whole movie, and it's just like, are we just going to ignore, basic red flags that whenever the influence is on those specific people, and you see it with the children first mainly, and then you kind of see it spread throughout the whole rest of the movie, but whenever they're under the influence of Sutter Kane, their eyes start bleeding in a very specific way, and just everyone kind of ignores it, and they just continue on their day, and they just kind of stay. Like, what? Yeah, the freaky kids would have been my first telltale. Like, I need to get the fuck out of here. Meanwhile, Alan Grant is doing the same thing, and it just doesn't even really care.
Which I wonder at what point are the hooks set in? That it's once you start paying attention to realize that, oh, they're like, those kids are weird and I should probably leave town. Are you already too deep in that you no longer have control to leave? And it's just, even if I wanted to, I'm going to stay and investigate because now that's what I'm supposed to do.
Well, and there's like two levels to it, right? Because there's the level of he controls everything in Hobbs End because it's his town, and like he's writing out people's lives. But then there's also the level with like Styles, where once you read it, you're just completely under his control.
Yeah. So I wonder if that's the thing. It's like, otherwise it slowly infects people in the town. But if you read it, it's just like, no, that's you're just microdosing Sutter Kane at this point. Like, you're in.
Because I imagine it's got to be like, if he is writing your life, like what you've done, what you're doing, what you're going to do, and then that's revealed to you. Like, I mean, there's a scene later which just does that really well. Like, I could see that, like,
Messing
really
with you.
messing with your whole perspective of reality, which is like a big key point in the movie. Is like, what is reality?
Well, that's kind of
Yeah.
like harkens on just like destiny. Is it predetermined, or do we decide our own fate? If you were to tell me that, oh, this guy's writing my story, I'm vindictive enough. Like, whatever you just told me I'm about to do, I'm not doing it. You're telling
And
me
then
I'm
you get to the next page, and that's...
What you did.
I mean, this feels like a dark Lovecraftian version of Stranger Than Fiction, which granted wouldn't come out until years later. But I mean, same concept. If you just slightly turn it, it goes from like, oh, it's like a rom-com dramedy type thing to, oh no, it's straight horror.
Yeah, there were some like critical reviews of this that I was reading, and that like some people said that it tried to be too deep and didn't quite succeed in getting there, which I could see. Like, there's definitely like overtones of being like, oh, like questioning what is reality, and like getting into some of the existentialism and like some of like the Kant philosophy stuff. Like it's there. Like, and if you really, really dig, it's like, oh, you can like really have some interesting I think this movie could have some really interesting like conversations about what it's about rather than the movie itself.
Well,
and
that's the problem
there's more.
with Lovecraft too, because his work is a lot easier to digest when you're reading it, but then to translate that into a live action and still portray the same themes and even just the same exposition is a lot more difficult, because it's words on pages versus having to actually show what's going on, or at least that's the mark of a good movie is, show don't tell, whereas the book is the complete opposite. There are no pictures.
Not with that attitude.
So Linda is throwing herself at Trent, which, for somebody who was into Linda at the very beginning of this movie, he turns her down twice throughout the rest of this.
At least he has standards and he understands.
Yeah, she does it very creepily, though.
Yeah,
like,
so
it's so aggressive that it feels strange.
What if she's not being controlled? She's doing this just to make sure that it's like, he will never want anything to do with me again.
Or any woman in the future.
That's risky, though, because you don't know what some people are into.
Mr. and Mrs. Pickman. Speaking of which,
sorry, during the church scene with Sutter Kane, I was starting to get like some Hellraiser vibes a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit. Obviously, a completely different story, but just I kind of had that same feeling that I watched Hellraiser. That I was starting to feel again with this. At least that's when all the shit started to hit the fan, and you saw that weird Voldemort thing on the back of her neck.
I was just about to say, it actually felt like Sorcerer's Stone with the gooey backhead.
Yeah, I do also want to say, like, that whole light trick with, like, he pushes her face into the book and, like, it lights up from behind also, to me, felt very Hellraiser with, like, the really stark lighting stuff.
Yeah. But this movie's had a lot of cool scenes, and just the way that certain things played out, it was different compared to a lot of other horror movies that I've seen, anyway.
Yeah. And it's kind of at this point where things start to really pick up, the post-attempted makeout, because now Sam Neill's all freaked out and he's running around, and we kind of get our first, like, monster reveal.
Yeah, what in the thing?
Yeah, what in the thing, really. Because Sam Neill's running and he has his encounter with the painting, where now he sees the painting and it's got, like, weird creatures on
like
it instead of people.
Beasts.
He ends up going down to the basement of the inn, and the innkeeper is there, but now she's some, like, giant tentacle monster who attacks him, and he grabs an axe and cuts one of her tentacles. And, like, Sam's now all of a sudden, he's having a real bad day.
To put it lightly.
So he decides to go to the bar. She's like, I'm going to go to the bar, get a drink.
Even before he does, he goes back to the bedroom, and then he looks under the door frame, and he could see, like, more tentacles coming out from under. They snake back inside, and then the door opens, and it's just Styles kind of, like, smiling really weirdly at him, and that's the freak out.
Yeah, she's full monster person now.
And then she manhandles him, because then it cuts to the next scene of him getting thrown through the door into the hallway, and it's after this happens, and after what you see happening downstairs and with the paintings, then it's just you get in the car, and it's okay, well, I'm just going to end up at the bar.
And then he sees that one last monster in the greenhouse.
Yeah, because he
Yeah,
sees that
full
creature,
on.
which they do load a lot of creature sequences in this, that it's not all just backloaded into the wall of monsters. We do see a number of them throughout, and just like creepy townsfolk, because when he's driving away, then he sees that mob dancing around Linda.
Yeah.
And then I love when you were talking about, like, oh, there's swearing in this movie. There's the F-bomb of just he's watching this happen, and then just like a deformed townsfolk, like a demonic thing, runs up to him carrying an axe, and you think they're going to attack, and instead they look at them and are just like, fuck you, and then they just keep running.
That's right. I mean, and then after that, what do you do besides go into the bar?
Yeah.
And this is where we have another encounter with our beloved Simon, and things aren't going well for Simon.
He's seen better days.
Yeah, Simon is like the last holdout of like sanity.
Yes, he's
He
the
like
most sane townsperson.
he hasn't gone. Yeah, he hasn't gone fully crazy people, but like he kind of explains that like he can feel what's happening. But he's like the last holdout, and this is where I thought maybe we were gonna get the Simon and Sam Neill team up. Like, all right, action team. Like, let's go. We can do this. That wasn't exactly Simon's fate in this scene.
They're like, get in the car, and Simon's like, shotgun.
It's good. It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Simon, rather than subduing to the crazies, does decide to kill himself in the bar. Which is rather sad scene. So afterwards, Sam Neill goes back outside. not reinvigorated, just terrified, I guess. And he's like, all right, what was I doing? Let me get back in the car.
In all the times that we've played Mansions of Madness, which is a Lovecraft style board game, I think this scene kind of perfectly encapsulates Lovecraft, because as he exits the bar, that entire circle that was going around Styles is now looking directly at him, and it's just a full riot of people with axes, pitchforks, torches, slowly advancing on him. And that's when his freak out of like, I need to get the fuck out of here kind of kicks in.
Yeah, it's really kind of a classic. And then him and Styles just get into a slap fight real quick.
They start throwing hands.
Just throwing hands. And apparently Sam Neill, he's the one slap king, because he just knocks her out with his slap.
We saw in the previous scene when they encountered each other, she threw him through a door. But evidently now that he's like, I'm ready for you. It's like Gary Busey and Silver Bullet. It's okay.
Well, the whole slap
he's
thing happened was because he gets in the car, she's in it too. And then, he carries her into the car. Mm-hmm. And then just as he's like, well, where are the keys? And she's like, I have the keys. And then she swallows them, which apparently a citation needed that they're made of pasta when she swallows them.
I know. I was going to mention that, which is a fun little ad. It's always fun when they do like cool things with like food props.
Yeah.
Like I remember in like Game of Thrones in the first season when Khaleesi has to eat the dragon heart.
Yeah, it's like a gummy bear or something.
It's a giant gummy bear.
I think actors should just dedicate to their craft. If I don't need them to make a prop, I'll eat keys. So Hollywood, my phone is available.
Bucket afterward. It's just
that's a
30-pound
come out
bucket of keys.
Yeah, sorry, we quite didn't get that. Can we shoot again?
So Sam Neill now, without keys to his car, unveils his party trick and just pulls a Phillips head screwdriver out of the glove box, pries open the ignition, and just starts it with a screwdriver. Just manhandles it until it works.
There's precedent for that, I think.
Wait,
I'm not.
He's an insurance investigator. Of course, he knows how to do this.
Maybe not precedents in his movie, but I think I've seen that trick done on some old cars.
Oh, maybe that is just like an old car thing. They're just really easy to jimmy. So Sam Neill, he starts driving away. I think intent on leaving the town, and he ends up stopping the car at one point. I think did he like almost hit a kid on a bike? I think. That same old man kid?
Yeah, so she ends up coming on to him again
in
the car, and he's trying to fend her off, and then he like stops the car, and then he sees the old boy in a phone booth.
So he gets out, and we get another, like, she's got some really great creep scenes.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The Exorcist scene here.
Because he's outside of the car, and we get, like, this cool angle where it's just, like, she just, like, pops her head out of the car by the side door, and you're just like, oh, hey, Styles, what's going on? And then she just does the weird inverted back crawl on her elbows.
And the sound is the worst part, because you hear the bones pop as she contorts her head in 180.
It looks fairly decent. I think it's a practical head, and it looks pretty good.
Yeah, it looks
good.
They
had a contortionist with the upside down mask or the rotating mask.
I thought you were going to say a contortionist that could spin their head.
They could actually break their neck like that. But I don't know why, but that like bent neck thing just is so creepy. And then they later do a similar gag in. I don't know if I've ever shown you this movie, David, but you guys should check out from, I think, 2017, 2016, Terrified. It's an Argentinian film that is a really good scare using a similar thing. And then they use it again in Smile, but it's like a cheaper version.
No, I don't think I have seen that one. I'll have to look that up. So now, Samuel, who is royally creeped out, is now going to escape the town in the car. And now we get this whole he's trapped, he won't let me leave scene where Sam Neill, every time he tries to drive away, he just ends up right in front of the mob again. And I think he does this like 3 times before just getting angry. And he tries to I think he tries to drive through the mob, but Styles is there, and he ends up swerving and crashing the car in the light post, which, if you've seen any horror movie where you're trying to escape losing your car, is never a good idea.
Which I guess in this instance here, any other movie, I would be like, oh my God, really? And then we lose the car. But here the car wouldn't have done you any good anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter.
I mean, he tried 3 times. That's the video game rule. Didn't work. And I guess he passes out in the car because he eventually wakes up and he's in a confession booth in the church. Except instead of a weird priest guy next to him, he has Sutter Kane. And this is where we're going to start to basically learn everything.
Not as weird as a priest.
The big exposition dump.
Yeah.
Which I like how Sutter Kane explains all of what's happening and how, like, I've grown in power, and since I've been here, that, like, dark gods or whatever have given me the ability of controlling reality. And then Trent is just like, yeah, your books suck. Right to the end, buddy.
That really sets him off. He's never a good at taking criticism.
You just hear all of a sudden, like, the confessional door opens and you just hear walking away.
It kills me though that Trent, that Alan Grant is still, what's his name? John Trent.
Trent,
You keep saying his name from the movie and then you change it to the wrong one. It's
I
you
feel
got
like
it right
it's not
every time.
I feel like it's not Trent. That's why. He's still stubborn even in the confessional. It's just like there's got to be an explanation for all this. Like, dude, what else do you have to see?
He's trying to hold on
to really think that this is fake. I mean, if a woman comes out of the car, I mean, first of all, red flag, to swallow keys. That's impressive. That's real dedication to the bit. But then to exit the car and do that contortionist bullshit, like, you watched it happen with your own eyes. That's everything else before that obviously has to be real. Even the transporting thing.
Yeah. Simon was going to kill himself anyway. They just hired him to do it in front of
It was the weirdest Craigslist ad.
Now, like, this opens up, like, I think some interesting questions in the movie. Like, I mean, if you want to dive deep into the movie, like, one thing I had thought about on one of my rewatches was, like, is this all actually happening? Or is Sam Neill just one of those people really susceptible to the books? And this is all just in his head, and he's imagining this in a nightmare because he's kind of gone crazy from reading the books.
It's hard because
like, it can go either way.
Because there's things that happen leading up to the quote unquote realization, like skipping ahead a little on the big reveal that, you know, Styles never existed and you handed in the manuscript months ago, and then he's only realizing that now. It's like, well, then what point does the switch happen where it goes from reality to this is all in his head?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that spot gets kind of foggy. Like, so, like, after we get the big reveal about, like, all like the extra dimensional demons and they're coming back and I'm God now kind of thing with Sutter Kane.
Which it was interesting as he's explaining that of he finished his last work called In the Mouth of Madness to give to Trent, and that the power of belief is causing fantasy to become reality because people are reading it and having such belief in it. Like, very, like we were talking about it earlier, like orcs from 40K. It's very like just because they believe it so hard that it's happening now. And that's why the agent went, not because he went crazy just and was killing people. It was he was specifically trying to stop Trent because he knew eventually what would happen because he read the book to the end. Mm-hmm. Which then makes the agent kind of like this tragic hero of, yeah, he read it to the end, went crazy, and then still tried to stop it from happening.
Which makes this question even stranger. Like, do you read Sutter Kane?
I am Sutter Kane.
Which maybe he just, like, in his craziness, he misspoke. He's like, are you reading Sutter Kane? Like, give me a timeline. Where are we in this? Are you reading it?
Because if I kill you now, it's kind of on me.
I have to make sure you haven't started reading yet, otherwise this is too late and this is all pointless.
Well, actually, then that becomes very Now we're back to Terminator again.
They sent him back in time to kill Sutter Kane before he could read the manuscript. But yeah, so we get this the big exposition dump where Sutter Kane explains basically everything that's going on to Sam Neill, and how he's, right now he's holding back essentially the old gods who are trying to come back in, and how he is now effectively God, and how everything he's written is coming to pass, and it's all that is. But he has to send Sam Neill back to the real world outside of Hobbs End so that he can deliver the manuscript so it can be published and distributed so that people will read it and then they'll go crazy so that the world will be ready for when the old ones come back.
That scene of him running down gave me two vibes of the that underground Chamber of Secrets from Harry Potter as he's running down, but also at the same time Coraline when she's running away from the other mother down the long tube that seemed to never end.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Metal Gear Solid 4 when Snake is walking through the microwave hallway.
Well, if Sam Neill was in more agony, sure, but
the thing
that's not an easy stroll.
The thing also that I don't understand is if the whole point is the creatures from beyond and like the dark gods and the elder gods and all of the other dimensional creatures are looking to expand throughout this world, and they're going to do that by spreading the word of this, then I don't know why he's like, I can only hold them back so long. Take the manuscript. They're going to burst through and control the world, or you take the manuscript and then they're going to burst through and control the world. What are you holding back then? Run, Trent.
I think he wants...
I think...
I'll let you speak, David.
Oh, I think he's talking about them coming into Hobbs End, because I think Hobbs End is like distinctly a different place than the real world.
Yeah, it's like this pocket dimension.
Yeah, that's how I took it in. That was like Hobbs End is a weird pocket dimension that they're invading, but ultimately they want to get to the real world, but they... yeah, it is weird that, like, why does Trent have to run?
Or unless it's like we're not dealing with a us versus them, it's us versus them with a third party of he wants the manuscript to get out because he wants to control that, like, godlike status. But the creatures that are coming through aren't specifically like, oh, he's working for them or they're involved with the manuscript. It's just, no, he's gotten this power adjacently through all of this, right. So it's take the manuscript and get out of here because I still want to maintain control.
Right, it's like you made a deal with the devil, but now the devil's come.
Yeah,
and it's like
this is a stretch, but I think of it almost like World of Warcraft with the Burning Crusade and the Scourge, and where the old gods are the Burning Crusade, they send in the Lich King allegory being Sutter Kane. And he creates all of these mind-controlled people that he can have all the control and godlike power over, but it's also kind of softening up the rest of the earth so that they can come in and do whatever they would want as well.
I could see that too.
So if you guys never read it, and if you're interested, there is a comic series called Fall of Cthulhu. They have an omnibus. It's by Michael Allen Nelson, but it covers... It's a cool story, but also it covers a kind of that concept of it's not just, it's everybody, like humanity, and then the enemy is the old gods and the all of this.
It's old gods and
all of them are a lot of like infighting, and then you have different cults where it's like it's the cult of Nyarlathotep or like Shub-Niggurath and like all of these different things that it's not just you're either on the Eldritch side or you're on humanity's side. It's, well, I could be working for a cult that's trying to bring back Cthulhu, but then another cult that's fighting our cult because they're worshiping a different one of them. So it's like it's a bunch of different parties involved, which could be the case here of it's not just, we're trying to get them out. It's, well, I'm also trying to leverage things and make a play for myself during this.
Yeah, I definitely feel like there's a lot of interpretation to it because they don't make it very clear exactly what's happening.
And plus, that just kind of stems more along the lines of what we were saying on how too bad there's not another 30, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes to pad more into the story, because just taking it at face value, it seems kind of empty. And there's got to be more to it besides just, I want godlike power. But at the same time, with the way that you're describing what is about to come, your godlike power is meaningless. So why bother doing any of it?
Yeah, it's like if your godlike power is being granted by the thing you're trying to like run.
Unless it's just like a side effect, right? That like he just writes these books, and because people believe in it so much, these things are happening, and he just kind of leaned into it.
And now it's getting out of control.
Yeah, but if you have a godlike power to influence people to that degree, become some other kind of writer instead of just horror, you know?
He just makes cheap, steamy dime store romance novels.
He just like he quits his Arcane Publishing and he goes work for like what do they call? There's that really famous like cheesy romance publishing company, Harlequin novels.
Run!
Like,
he's reading the manuscript, and as he's doing it, he just has like a bigger and bigger six-pack and longer hair.
He's like, now all of my books feature Fabio.
Run, Trent! And he looks back over his shoulder, and now he's covered in baby oil. Run, Trent!
I'm becoming too irresistible. He just goes full like Squidward.
Hurry!
He just turns, and he's doing like the pursed lip face.
So Sam Neill runs, and we kind of see that same familiar tunnel thing that we got when they were first driving into Hobbs End, except this time it's much more realized. Still kind of looks like a spaceship, but so he's running down this tunnel. We're not sure if he's going to get away. He trips and falls, and we're like, oh, this is going to be it. But then it fades to black, and it comes back, and Sam Neill is now lying in the middle of a country road.
A crossroads.
And it's true, a crossroad.
Metaphors.
A metaphor. And this is where we get Hayden Christensen.
Yeah. And he's
Finally.
like, oh, young boy, where am I? And he's like, Tatooine, sir.
Doesn't he also say, like, it's like, sir, do you want a paper?
Yeah, he offers him a paper.
Absolutely. That'll be 5 cents. They ain't free.
Can you just take the rest of these and I'll tell them I delivered them?
Yeah. Samuel asks, like, how he gets to the highway, which is not the question I would ask if I'm on foot. I'd probably go, like, nearest town. But,
otherwise, John Trent has to enter the on-ramp running 50 miles an hour. He's doing, like, the left turn
like,
hand sign, just sprinting.
It turns into Looney Tunes, like in that, Now I'm David. What is that movie? Not Shaolin Soccer.
I'm Contagious.
Kung Fu Hustle.
Kung Fu Hustle. The way they run.
Oh, good movie.
That movie.
Oh, he just starts doing, like, Scooby-Doo legs where they just start rotating in 360s.
It's just a blur.
So Sam Neill, finds the highway, and he ends up hitchhiking and getting to a motel after dropping the manuscript that he still had just in the middle of the road, which seemed careless, but, he then gets to the motel, and while he's at the motel, he gets a mysterious package from the kind of clerk at the front desk, who Sam Neill just totally freaks out on. Because he's like, nobody knows that I'm here. Who did this come from? The guy's like, I don't know, I wasn't here. And then I guess his dad shows up, and he's like, I was, and I didn't see shit. And I was like, oh, that's the end of that conversation, I guess.
Which I would have loved if then he takes that manuscript and then he loses that one, and eventually Sutter Kane is like, oh my god, I'm going to tattoo it on your body like a Clive Barker novel. Just take this.
Yeah. Sutter Kane has to rewrite the manuscript each time.
Yeah.
He's like, guys, I'm going off memory on this one. I don't know.
We do
What's
not
the guy's
have personal
name?
computers. I did this all on a typewriter. I was kind of buzzed. My editor has gone crazy. She's part of the monster cult now.
So Sam Neill freaks out, and he goes back to his motel room, and he burns the manuscript page by page in his sink, hoping that he's finally seen the last of it. He then gets on a bus to go home, and we get this kind of starting to see Sutter Kane's like hold over him a bit.
Yeah.
Because he's on the bus, he's tired, he's with this old lady, he ends up passing out, and Sutter Kane shows up in his dream and starts talking to him. And we get another one of those dream within a dream scenes, because Sutter Kane's talking to him about how he has to get the manuscript back, and does this fun little trick where he's like, "Did I ever mention that my favorite color was blue?"
I like this. It's so simple.
And it is, and then Sam Neill wakes up and everything has a blue tint on it. Like in film, they just put like a filter over it, or like a filter over the light. But it does, everything has a blue tint, and Sam Neill just freaks out. He just looks around the bus, everything's a little bit blue, and he just starts screaming.
The bus
I was
driver
not
turns on the
expecting
radio
that
and it's like full
reaction.
65.
I mean, on most bus trips, like if I was on the megabus, like people would just be like, "Yeah, all right, whatever."
was that, Dean?
Scream.
After everything he's seen, I was not expecting that what set him off.
I mean, he saw the
was
wall
like
of
the last of
monsters
it.
and just was like, oh, and started running.
That's not good.
Everything's blue, and it's just the color scheme gets him.
He was hanging on
maybe
by
he
a
was having
thread, I
that
guess.
moment
At this
of
point.
like, I'm out of Hobbs End, I'm safe.
Also, I wonder if he had said a color of like, did you know my favorite is chartreuse? But what if John Trent didn't know what color chartreuse is? Would he all of a sudden still see it? Or would it be like, I don't know what that is, so I don't believe in chartreuse?
He's like, my favorite color is sepia tone, and he wakes up and it's like the lighting in the bus is just slightly brown, but like it has those incandescent bulbs that are also slightly brown, and he's just like, I don't know.
It's the same, but 5 lower contrast. And he wakes up and he's like, I guess?
This was beyond me.
40 lower contrast, and he wakes up and it's AVP2.
I like how in the next scene, though, the clerk is just, I wish we could be this blunt with people that just don't get it. She flat out says to him, are you deaf and dumb, sir? Like, God, I wish I could. The amount of times from a customer service perspective, I wish I could say that. Because he goes into some local, he probably went to like the capital of New Hampshire and like, let me get records of this town. And she's like, that they don't exist. And then just back and forth at least several times because we miss all of that. And it just starts with the scene of her saying, are you deaf and dumb, sir? I'm telling you for the 10th time, that town doesn't exist. And you see him freak out. But man, I really honor that woman's. I really respect that woman going as far as just like I just can't get over it.
And like he should know this, right? Because the only place his town appears on a map is his weird book cover map that he made. Like he already knew it does not exist or show up on any map, but I guess now he's like trying to justify his memories. And it's just like, I don't know.
He's definitely lost it at this point.
Oh yeah, he's 100% done. And so after he has this kind of exchange, which it must be at like a restaurant or like a town hall or something, we're back with Sam Neill at Arcane Publishing, and this is where we find out that Styles never existed, because I believe we're supposed to assume that he's now also told this whole story to Charlton Heston, and Charlton Heston's just looking at him and he's like, yeah, and you went with, who was it again? He's like, Styles. He's like, oh yeah, that woman you said I sent you with.
Yeah, which I think it's not that she never existed in the first place. It's once she no longer served a purpose and he wrote her out of the story, she just ceases to exist entirely.
That's scary.
Which also, so that means he's now telling the story to Dr. Wren, but while he's telling the story to Dr. Wren, does he then repeat the story about how he told the story to Harglow? So now he's telling the story within a story that Wren's having to hear all of this twice.
No,
I mean, I can take it one step further. It's like, does that mean that Sutter Kane wrote a story about him telling a story?
And that means at the end of the movie, when he's watching it in the theater, he's watching himself tell the story to Dr. Wren about telling the story to Harglow about Sutter Kane writing that.
Good.
That's all I got.
Yeah. So that's when we find out that Styles isn't in fact a person or at least anymore. and Sam Neill is completely he's completely lost it. I almost wish we got one more scene in between this and the next one, because we go from Sam Neill kind of losing it in the office to just full on hobo on the street.
Yeah, because I mean, he eventually. The only thing that is disappointing is, I get that it's supposed to mirror the fact of the agent in the beginning, but then when we found out that the agent had a purpose of he was trying to stop all of this from happening, he's just doing it of, oh, I got a trench coat and an axe and I just killed a kid in the street because he read the book.
It's a random. It's like you have to kill a lot more people to be effective here in this situation.
He's gonna need a bigger axe.
So is the right question? No, I don't read Sutter Kane. Is that really the correct
Do you
answer?
read Sutter Kane? I don't know. Which gets me out of this conversation?
Because the fact that he said no initially and the axe guy didn't do anything, or at least it didn't look like he was going to actually attack, we won't know because of the police. And then this time, the kid says, "Oh yeah, I love it." Kid, literally eyes bleeding, and that's when he kills him. It makes you wonder: is he trying to stop people from, like, is he doing mercy killings?
I mean, maybe that's what it is. He was going to the bookstore and he was just going to try and stop the spread of it by killing people.
Which,
with an axe.
There's got to be a better method, Bud, than this. This is how I'm going to stop it from spreading. Wouldn't you want to go to maybe like, okay, then go to the publisher, stop it there, and maybe then go online and like find other crazy people and do targeting attacks on bookstores, stop a supply chain line.
Yeah, I mean, we do find out, I think Nick had mentioned it earlier, that, like, when Sam Neill's at the publisher and he's like, you can't publish it. He's like, what do you mean? You brought me the manuscript 7 months ago. It's already out on shelves. The movie's coming out soon, too.
Yeah. Which, can you imagine, Sutter Kane also recording the audiobook version for Audible in that church?
Good acoustics.
Him and the little voice, the thing on the back of his head.
That's how he does the other voices.
Yeah.
I do like the line though. It's like, oh, I can't remember it now. Of like, are you reading Sutter Kane? And he's like, yeah. It's like, oh, then this won't come as a surprise, because he's like, he knows that it's already been written about, so it would be in the book. And then we end up coming back to the asylum. The flashback ends and Trent is back in the mental institution, finishing his story to Dr. Wren. At this point, Trent, he's totally gone, and he knows that the world is doomed. He even mentions a line about how every species can smell its own extinction.
Yeah.
And he's just like completely given up. And Dr. Wren ends up leaving and leaving him alone.
I like how Dr. Wren even asks of like, okay, but what about people who don't read?
Oh yeah,
it's like there's a movie
coming out. He's like, when Trent goes crazy, he just becomes so matter of fact about it.
Yeah,
he's just like, yeah. Well, he just becomes he's like cynical insane.
Yeah.
So Dr. Wren leaves, and then we get this scene that is basically the world collapsing. Like, I'm assuming now, like, based on, because you don't see anything, it's just all from, like, we're watching Sam Neill's reaction to everything happening, essentially. Is that, like, I assume, like, monsters are coming in and, like, trashing the place, and you're hearing screams. And
it's like waking up in Raccoon City.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, it's basically the apocalypse happening around him. Until eventually Sam Neill just curls up in the corner and I guess falls asleep, because then he kind of comes back and it's like the morning, and he has a very much like first episode of Walking Dead moment where he's walking out of the asylum and kind of seeing like bloody scratches on the walls and his door's been ripped off, and he sees like a car overturned in the asylum parking lot.
Well, and then even when he's still in the asylum, the radio is going and they're doing the news reports talking about like, there's a sudden epidemic of mass killings and riots, and if you're not infected, stay inside, like stay away from anybody else regardless of who they are. So it really is like the end of the world scenario, which because of all this, it's not like, oh, well, there'll be a band of survivors. It's kind of out of your hands, Because I assume
Yeah.
if it's written that this gets taken over, you lost already.
Yeah, and I like how Sam Neill was saying that was like for like the people who aren't already crazy, like it'll be bad for the few.
Yeah.
And I do like as Sam Neill's walking out of the asylum, he like grabs a towel and he like wipes the crosses off of his face.
Clearly they don't work. Hey,
Well,
actually,
that didn't work.
I've been not watching, but like having the movie play as we discuss things, and looking at the movie poster. The movie poster is also directed by John Carpenter, also
Yeah,
produced by Sandy King.
Yeah, like the written
funny.
by and all of that. It's a good poster.
And so we're getting the scene of Sam Neill walking through kind of the destroyed town, and he ends up walking past a movie theater playing the movie, and I can only imagine his inner dialogue is like, fuck it. He just grabs a bucket of popcorn and sits down and starts watching the movie. And the movie poster says that it stars him, like all of the actual people in the movie.
His
it
name's on the
stars.
marquee outside.
Which then
And he sits down and he's watching the movie, and the movie is literally just
The movie we just watched.
scenes of the movie that we're currently watching.
Well, I like how that means Sutter Kane wrote that a movie was created and he would go into the theater and watch it, but then the movie itself just consists of supercut of dunks on John Trent of like, I'm not crazy, and then it smash cuts to him screaming in 4 different scenes of like, this is reality, it's not fiction. It's fiction, it's not reality. So how petty does Sutter Kane have to be, or how funny does he find himself to be like, John Trent, the only remaining kind of sane guy, will go into a theater and then just watch me make fun of him for 2 hours?
I do love it though, because like at this point, Trent is kind of crazy, but like he has the realization.
Yeah, he's
'Cause now he's
self-aware
watching
enough to be like, all of this is
Yeah.
crazy.
He's now part of the team.
Yeah.
And he's watching the movie of him and the things that he did in real life on a movie, and he's just like, I'm just gonna, and he just starts laughing, just like hysterically, like it's the funniest thing he's ever seen.
It'd be better if
And
he
it's
finally
such-
decided, like, you know what, I'll just walk in and see that movie, and then the ticket person's like, that's $8. He checks his pocket, but Sutter Kane wrote that he only has $7, and they're like, I'm sorry. Like, you're short. And he's like, oh, man,
Can't even see the
the
movie.
hits
I'm
just
in.
keep on coming. It's like sad trombone as he walks off into the sunset.
And I just love that like that's how it ends. Like he has this whole self-realization, and like, yeah, I don't know. I thought it was a great.
I
ending
love this
for it.
movie. But
Don't bury the lead, Tim.
definitely go check out Fall of Cthulhu, the comic series, and then also go check out Prince of Darkness, because I think you'll dig both.
I will second Tim's and say I do also love this movie. I mean, I picked this movie. I think there are areas I wish there are things I think it could have done better, but overall I always enjoy watching it, and it's one of those movies that always makes me think something about it. And like I said, like it's always a movie, no matter how many times I watch it, I always still have to pay attention to, because I'll always pick up on something. I think this is a movie that really benefits from a rewatch, because because the storytelling is so wonky and kind of all over the place and a little inconsistent because of how it's framed.
Yeah.
A rewatch can just, I think, like open it up a little bit. I mean, whether or not John Carpenter intended for this movie to have like blank spots and backtracks and things just to make you think about it, or he was just trying things out to try and have fun, I'm not sure, but it comes off to me as like a spooky movie, not scary really, that is kind of a thinker.
Yeah, this is the first time I'd seen this. It's definitely not a movie that I would normally choose to watch, but I did enjoy it. I think, I mean, Sam Neill's great, and I wish I should just try to see more things that he's in. But I think he really, I don't say he necessarily carried the movie, but he was interesting, and he's good enough to I don't know, for me to watch the whole time, going through these otherworldly experiences. Yeah, just love Sam Neill. Like he does make it better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's one of the, I do wish it was longer. Like it's one of the movies I think I wish it was longer, like maybe 15 to 20 minutes longer, because I do want to see some more of the things that are introduced into the movie. But
There was a thing
overall, I enjoyed it.
There's a thing that I like. Someone said in some interview podcast, I don't remember, but like when it comes to runtime for movies, you have to earn your runtime if it's going to be longer than an hour and a half. Like 90 minutes for a movie, that's it. You don't need it to be any longer. You really have to earn it to go past that. And especially nowadays where a lot of movies are 2 hours, 2 hours and 10, 2.5 hours long, and it doesn't need to be. This is one of those movies that it really should have like the director's cut, adding on an extra like 30 minutes, even another 15 minutes just to give that extra more to the mythos that this world building is trying to do. And it really should be. I think a 2-hour movie for this would have done a lot more for it.
Yeah, it's true. It's so bad that so many movies now are like 2.5 hours that for no reason. There's feels like everything's like 2.5 hours now, and so much of it just drags.
Yeah.
And this, I really wish even like another 15 minutes to like develop a little bit more, because they were trying to do so much world building in this, and like they hit the key points that like for me got me invested in it, but they didn't have time to like flesh out a lot of those like bigger points that they were trying to make.
It's opening a great bottle of wine and then not letting it breathe. Da 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 da. However we end shows now.
Does anyone else have any final thoughts, final takes, final jargons?
Get Sam Neill and more things. I gotta look up what he's doing. I want to see what he's up to.
He does need to be in more things. Looking for the outro.
Also, you can also just read Lovecraft, his actual stuff. I mean, a lot of his things are more magazine, like stories that he's submitted, and there's not really a book of a specific thing that you could read. It's usually a compendium of multiple things all in one go. He does have a lot of different stories. Some are amazing, some are not. And racism aside, I mean, he's had a big impact on the literary world, because especially one of his big things with his whole universe that he's created, he didn't want to like register it as an IP. He wanted other creators to kind of lend to that world so that they can create this big like MCU kind of thing back in like the 20s, when he was writing all of this stuff, so other people can add to it and kind of cross over and add to what he's created. So of course, the big one that everyone knows of is like the Call of Cthulhu. There's also like the Shadow over Innsmouth, Dunwich Horror is another really big one. There's plenty of great stories that he's done that it's worth reading and checking out, because at the very least you can see the bones that he created that so many modern movies take from, and even not just modern but just like stuff from the 80s, because all of that kind of like cultish kind of thing, that's definitely him. The weird monsters that are just like cosmic horror, that's all him. So it's worth checking out.
Also interesting enough, evidently he was friends with Robert E. Howard, who did Conan. So there's crossover things mentioned between the Cthulhu mythos and Conan. As far as like, was it Volusia, the serpent people and whatnot is mentioned in both stories. Which makes it less frightening when you picture like Conan ripping through elder gods. Make that game from the makers of God of War, Conan versus Cthulhu.
Well, gentlemen, Thank you again for coming along. As always, you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at Screen Refresh, or email us your own movie memories at screenrefresh@gmail.com. If you like the show, help us out and leave a rating/review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts to help others find us. For Dean, Nick, and Tim, I'm David, and we'll see you again in a couple weeks with Rule of Thirds.